This is Graham Hancock. I know I don't like debunking people, but let's have a listen to what he says here. This is quite interesting.
That I would never seek to divorce the ancient Egyptians from the Great Pyramids. There are several reasons, actually. But first and foremost, I have no doubt that the ancient Egyptians were involved in completing the Great Pyramids, and there's 4 reasons for that. And that is the shafts, the so-called air shafts, that cut through the body of the Great Pyramid. They're very small. They're about that wide, that high. There are 2 of them in...
So just bear with me, I will point my points out in a sec.
The so-called King's Chamber. One on the north wall, one on the south wall. And they...
Did you see that? It didn't actually go all the way out to the outside on that image. Keep that in your mind.
Always exited on the outside of the pyramid. And that was known back into the 19th century. You know, 19th century explorers could actually climb the Great Pyramid and roll a cannonball into one of those shafts, and it would end up in the King's Chamber. So,
well, actually, that doesn't seem correct because, there was a project called, I won't even try and pronounce that, where basically they found out that both shafts, Kings and Queens, do turn at a 45-degree angle going up towards the top of the pyramid, not out. And in fact, also, if that was the case, then we would be sending cameras down from the outside, not inside. If you ever watched the documentaries on the History Channel, they have to go inside the pyramid and put their remote control cameras up with wheels, whereas if you could just roll a camera down, you could quite easily put a camera inside a ball and just roll it down and then pull it back up with wire. So it's yeah, so I think he's wrong there.
Right. Obviously, they were connected. The shafts in the so-called Queen's Chamber, and I use the word so-called because we actually don't know what these chambers were for. No burial of any pharaoh was ever found inside the Great Pyramid. The so-called Queen's Chamber, the shafts don't exit on the outside of the Great Pyramid, and nor until 1872 were they visible within the Queen's Chamber itself. They'd been closed off with little facing blocks. You couldn't see that they were there. But one researcher went around tapping on the walls. He thought, there's shafts upstairs in the King's Chamber. Maybe there are here. And he found 2 hollow points, one on the north wall, one on the south wall, broke them open, and lo and behold, there were the concealed shafts. Now, the thing about those shafts is that all 4 of them point at key stars, one of them being the lowest of the 3 stars of Orion's belt, in the position in the sky that they occupied around 2500 BC, not 12,500 years ago.
So in other words, he's saying that these were built 2,500 years ago, when at that point everyone was writing, whereas obviously 10,000, 12,000 years ago, there was only a handful of people that could read or write, and yet no pyramids. You've got to remember also, there's 1,000 pyramids around the world, so he's now attributing this to the Egyptians, which is stupid. Graham Hancock, stupid, because you've got the Bosnian pyramids is absolutely massive and the Egyptians weren't there. So and there's pyramids, 1,000 pyramids around the world, so they would have, the architects of this would have had to have gone all the way around and done them there, or we're all just that clever. Anyway, let's carry on.
But 4,500 years ago, and that astronomical connection to the stars at that time says to me, we cannot divorce the ancient Egyptians from the Great Pyramid.
So basically he's saying because well, I'll let you play on.
But then there's a problem. The ground pattern on the 3 pyramids on the ground reflects the pattern of Orion's belt itself, and this is, of course...
Not so much. So I've actually done a video showing there's at least 15 other constellations that do have 2 stars and 1 off-centre. So they're assuming, and I don't like people that assume, because it makes an arse out of you and me.
No accident within the ancient Egyptian system, because the constellation of Orion was seen as the celestial image of the god Osiris, the civilization bringer, the entity who went around the world teaching civilization. That is who Osiris is, and he is seen in the sky. His image is seen in the sky as the constellation of Orion. And
so basically, he's admitting that there was a god called Osiris that went round and taught people how to do things. But he's saying it was the Egyptians that built the pyramids. Now, which one is it? Is it the Egyptians or is it the god? You see my point? It just I think he's clutching at straws here.
One of those shafts points at Orion's belt, and another one points at Sirius, and 2 of them point at the circumpolar stars.
So that's only if you turn the clocks back. Again, I've done another video where I turned the clock back thousands and thousands of years ago, and my front door points to, yes, to the Draco system, which means my ancestors must have been aliens and reptilian ones at that. So basically, you can turn the clock back to any time you want, and something will be pointing at something that you want it to point to. I've already covered this in my other videos.
At the time when Egyptologists believed the pyramids were built. So there's definitely a connection, and I wouldn't seek to break it. But
well, there's no connection. There's no connection. So the Anunnaki could have quite easily built these pyramids 10,000, as it says so in the Columbia University tablets, 10,000 BC, just after the Great Flood, and the Anunnaki built them, which is why we've got no records of any humans building them at all, because obviously there was none. And the Sphinx was built by Ningazida for the lion because of the constellation, because at that point they started to use Earth's years as opposed to their Shah's, and so he built the lion to say this is the time period, and he put his face on it to say this is who built the pyramids. So I don't know, Graham, I think you are pandering to people. You know, if you think that the Egyptians went round to every single country and built 1,000 odd pyramids and moved the stones, etc., from 75 miles away over hills, mud, in other countries as well, by the way, and all did that for a bit of a giggle, because obviously, unless there's a reason for these pyramids, which we know there's a reason for these pyramids, but the Egyptians at the time wouldn't have known, because they probably would have thought the planet was flat at that point. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I like Graham, but I think on this one he's just a bit out there. What's your thoughts? Breaking news, mainstream is stupid. So basically they're saying now new research claims that Stonehenge stones were not transported from Wales because they're such a distance away that there's no way that any normal person would be able to carry those stones unless it was aliens. And so here they basically go on and try and say that it's not from Wales, but they're not really sure what they're talking about. However, if you actually want to know what they're talking about, go to my Patreon page, Our True History. Click on the collections. You're going to love this, because I've already done a video, and then scroll down to the one that says over 150 odd videos here, long ones, documentaries. Go to the one that says everything else. Now, I've actually done a video showing why Stonehenge is exactly there. Solved, and it really is. It's 31-minute long documentary with evidence. So if you want to know, either listen to mainstream where they have no idea what they're talking about, or go to my Patreon page.
The Anunnaki were blue-skinned and white and black and looked like reptilians. They had slave workers called the Igigi, and they were from another planet. The Anunnaki created humans and accidentally made giants. Those giants built the pyramids. The Atlanteans were on the moon and had many fights with the Anunnaki. The alien Anunnaki gods had stargates and could go anywhere they wanted. They also made humans all look different around the world. For example, that's why white people don't look the same as Chinese. Of course, Noah's Ark was a spaceship. Any bad researcher will tell you that. Hang on a minute. I've just told you a lot of rubbish. All these theories are from bad researchers. Even normal people on TikTok make videos like this. They get way more views and shares than my videos, which show evidence. If you actually want the evidence instead of people just talking and making up stuff, visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. The difference between me and anyone else out there, I show the evidence, they just talk.
Neanderthal was possibly as smart as us, according to a new study here. Basically, it says that it may have just been cultural differences as opposed to brain power. So in other words, they were smart. However, here in the ancient tablets that called Enki and Nimna, where Enki and Nimna end up creating a first Homo sapien, in other words, the first human, it's because the Neanderthals weren't smart enough to do the job that they required. And here it says, my mother, the creature you planned will really come into existence, impose on him the worker carrying the baskets. Now, if Neanderthal was already smart, they could have done that without needing to be upgraded to Homo sapiens. But then it says, a bit further down, it says Homo sapiens inhabited South Africa, which is where the Anunnaki were, correct? But perhaps 100,000 years ago they migrated. Well, actually, according to this tablet here, which is the story of Adapa, that's when the Anunnaki bred.
Who Yahweh really was. Documentary with evidence from Our True History. I'll start with the premise that Yahweh is not an almighty being. The reason why he's not is because the video I done called The Lost Book of Our True History proves the gods were an alien race that we know as Anunnaki. Their race name is God, just like we are human. Please watch that video if you need to see the evidence that the Bible copied the older texts. Yahweh is named for the God of the Israelites. Why not the God of the universe? That's because there were many gods, many Anunnaki.
If Yahweh is not an almighty being, and the only ones on earth that were called gods were the Anunnaki, it stands to reason that one of the Anunnaki was Yahweh. Many Anunnaki names have been given to Yahweh, and some have even said who I'm going to say it is, but I'll be the only one to give the connecting evidence.
Let's first look at the first mention of Yahweh. I'm using a clip from a video called Who is Yahweh? How a Warrior Storm God Became the God of the Israelites and World Monotheism on YouTube by Dr. Justin Sledge on his channel Esoterica.
In fact, this god, whose simple name means something like the one that exists, emerged from the sands of Bronze Age obscurity to eventually become not just a national god, but, in the end, simply the god.
In the early stages of Israelite religion, El is often mentioned as a prominent deity. The name El is a generic Semitic term for god or deity and was used in various ancient Near Eastern cultures. El is associated with a fatherly figure, often depicted as the head of the pantheon. Over time, there seems to have been a theological shift, and the worship of Yahweh gained prominence among the ancient Israelites. The process of monotheization, where a polytheistic pantheon transforms into a monotheistic belief system, likely played a role in the development of the Israelite religion. I'm breaking down the differences between El and Yahweh now, so that later on you'll understand why the two were connected. Let's start with El. He was usually portrayed as an old man with a long beard and often 2 wings. That's interesting because in Sumerian carvings, some of the Anunnaki were carved with wings. Why would a god in need to be depicted with wings? I can't think of a reason, but let's look at why the Anunnaki would have been shown with wings. That also goes for the Egyptian gods, who were also Anunnaki. Wings in many ancient cultures are often symbolic of divine attributes and supernatural power. The inclusion of wings with the Anunnaki may signify their elevated, otherworldly status and their association with the divine realm. In some depictions, winged beings are associated with messengers or intermediaries between the earthly and celestial realms. The wings may symbolize the ability to traverse between different realms, conveying messages or acting as intermediaries between gods and humans. Wings can also be associated with celestial bodies, such as birds representing the sky or heavenly beings. By depicting the Anunnaki with wings, artists may have sought to convey a connection between these deities and cosmic forces, emphasizing their influence over natural and celestial realms. That makes a lot of sense. The main gods, Anunnaki, needed to show they were from heaven, which has been proven to mean space. I think we can agree that the reason El would have been shown with wings is because El was one of the main Anunnaki. But what about the long beard? El is said to have had a long beard before he became very old and frail and shaved it off. Why does an almighty being need a beard? I can't think of a reason, can you? But what about the Anunnaki? Did they have beards? Absolutely. It was a huge status for them to have beards. This is starting to look like El was one of the main Anunnaki. But which one? The clue is his age, the god named El, seems to only be used as an old god. Who could have been an old Anunnaki god around that time? The time El was first mentioned is about 3,000 years ago. That's 1,000 years before Christ. There is no Anunnaki by the name of El, but the Anunnaki did change their own names many, many times. Ea became Enki, for example, and Inanna was her Sumerian name, but Akkadians called her Ishtar. Who would have been a main god that would be old and would have had wings? Enlil. Enlil was a major deity in the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon, particularly in Sumerian and Akkadian, Babylonian and Assyrian stories. His name, Enlil, means Lord Wind in Sumerian, reflecting his association with the forces of nature, particularly wind and storm. But if Enlil was El and was old and frail, where does Yahweh come into this? I hear you ask. Before I get to Yahweh, I must let you know Enlil had a wife called Ninlil. But did El have a wife? Asherah is the name that appears to be his wife. Could that wife have been Ninlil? But because their region around 3,000 years ago, they were worshipped in the Canaanite and Ugaritic traditions, meaning they may have had different names, just like Inanna and Ishtar. I'll cover Asherah a little later. She is important to Yahweh rise in power as the main god. Around 4,000 years ago, there were wars between the Anunnaki. They used the humans to fight their battles. In some cases, they even used nukes. See my other videos for evidence. One Anunnaki called
The rest of this documentary, including the real name of Yahweh, is on the Patreon page. There is over 150 other long documentaries there with answers to subjects like, why was Stonehenge put exactly there? Why Easter Island statues were not made by man? Who the Norse gods were? The list goes on. Jump over to the Patreon page, patreon.com, Our True History, or visit my website where you can get to everything from there, ourtruehistory.co.uk.
This guy is going to explain about the Great Flood and this tablet here. So I'm just going to let it play and then I'll give you my thoughts on it.
And he builds a boat, and unlike in the flood account in Genesis, where all animals are taken in the Sumerian account, it's only domesticated animals. And after a while, the flood abates. So
there's actually tablets in the Columbia University that actually goes into more detail about why the Anunnaki, why Enki told his son to build a boat. Yes, his son, that was not Lamesh's son, it was actually Enki's son, which is why he ended up looking different from Lamesh. But it's all in the Columbia University, not the Penn Museum here, which is this one here. But anyway, let's have a listen.
This must be a myth that's common throughout the whole region.
So he's saying that it must be a myth, the flood. But then listen to this.
As I say, this is the earliest one that we have. And interestingly, there's some pretty good evidence that there was a dramatic flood in this area. So if you look at this slide here, this is the Great Trench that was excavated at the site of Ur, not that far from Nippur. And so that entire depth is all human occupation. And at the bottom, Woolley found this thick layer of alluvial mud, which is what you get from if you had a huge flood there. And so it is quite possible that the region did experience a very big flood that actually then seeped into the common consciousness of the whole region.
Seeped into. Basically, the flood happened. We've got enough evidence to show, not just for where he's talking about, but loads of other places where the ocean sediment is actually buried buildings, etc., that predate the flood, which was obviously the Anunnaki's buildings. So once again, museums are actually agreeing with not Zecharia Sitchin, but with the tablets that the Anunnaki came here and genetically modified us, and eventually Noah, which was his real name, original name was Aziazudra, which was Enki's son. If you're interested in finding out the evidence of all of this, feel free to follow my videos because I show where everything comes from. This is the director of the Penn Museum, who's actually agreeing with a gentleman called Zecharia Sitchin that wrote books on the Anunnaki, the alien race that genetically created us. And here, this guy is talking about this relief or this carving where, well, I'll let you listen.
Palace. And the genie was an individual who gave civilization to people, all of the things that made civilization worthwhile, although somebody rather uncharitably pointed out the other day that he appears to be holding a handbag.
I've covered what the handbag is in previous videos, but the point is this guy's agreeing with Zecharia Sitchin. So in other words, the stories of the Anunnaki teaching us. Now, all you have to do is just look at where everything suddenly sprang from. Money, agriculture, textiles, all from the same place that this gentleman here told us and taught us, Sumer in Mesopotamia. So the Anunnaki were real.
Transcript of classified tape recording made at Camp David, Maryland, during a presidential briefing regarding the subject of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial visitation of Earth. President Ronald Reagan was present. The recording was made between March 6 and 8, 1981. William Casey: Mr. President, good morning. As we discussed in February, this briefing contains some very sensational and some very, very classified information. I am not sure Oh well, I'm not going to make a decision on who you want in the room. That will be your decision, Mr. President. This will be a real tough one to follow since the briefing starts back, historically speaking, that is, and runs up to recent times. I believe we have prepared a good chronological order of events. I'm sure you, Mr. President, will have many questions. The list of questions presented to me by Advisor Number 2 should all be answered during this briefing. I hope they are, more than anyone, especially you, Mr. President. Leave this briefing with questions still unanswered. I have asked the caretaker to conduct this briefing. He is a contract employee of the CIA and is the present custodian of the information. Are we to assume that everyone is present? President. Well, it will be entirely up to you, Bill. I guess everyone must be cleared for this briefing of information. Is that not correct? WM Casey. Well, it appears everyone is, but as you will see, Mr. President, this stuff is pretty high up on the food chain. We call it ATS, or above top secret. This stuff has its own classification and markings. We have a special container, special printers and copiers for this stuff. Every word of this material is printed on special paper, then placed inside special covers. The caretakers have taken special efforts to protect all of this stuff from being released inadvertently or copied by some unauthorized person. But all of this material is protected by a special group of people. The caretaker is in charge of protecting this information and all of the other stuff associated with this information. I would prefer that you, Mr. President, decide on who you want in this room. Remember, this material is a closely guarded secret. Although the gist of the story has been out there for many years, very little of the actual truth has ever been released to the public. Oh yes, well, by some of the renegades maybe, but many of them have been discredited. President. Okay, Bill, I guess we need Advisor Number 1, you, Advisor 1-3, and Casper here. I think Advisor 1-2 and Michael can leave. Advisor 1-2, Mr. President, excuse me, but I would prefer to leave. I don't wish to know this information. You know, plausible denial or something like that. Michael Deaver. Mr. President, whatever you wish, I'll do. It would be an interesting subject, but do I really have a need to know? No, I don't think so. President. Okay, I guess that is it. WMKC. Thank you, Mr. President. I will now turn the briefing over to the caretaker. Advisor 3. Mr. President and Mr. Director, I already had this briefing. I can stay or leave. Secretary Weinberger and myself received this a few weeks ago. Secretary Weinberger. Mr. President, as you know, we have some pending business regarding that Soviet problem in Berlin. I think we might just handle that. Advisor Number 3, and I will let you close this meeting to just a few. President. Okay, Casp. I guess you and Advisor Number 3 can leave. Thanks for coming. WMKZ. Okay, Mr. President, that certainly narrows the audience. I think this is just right. President. Okay, well, I can't wait to hear this. Let's proceed. The caretaker. Good morning, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to give you a bit of information on my background. But before that, please, Mr. President, if you have questions during this briefing, just interrupt me, sir. I have been employed by the CIA for the past 31 years. I started the caretaking status of this project in 1960. We have a special group of people whom we call Group 6 that cares for all this information, President. Good morning, I hope. Well, I believe I will ask questions. Bill briefed me back in January, but I'm not sure. Huh. Well, was it detailed? No, I don't think so. Huh. Okay. Well, I'm sure Bill didn't tell me all because we only had about 1 hour. WMKC. Mr. President, I only gave you a quick briefing for the NSDD, National Security Decision Directives, that we want to incorporate into the overall action directives about this subject. Advisor Number 3, Casper and I have details far beyond what I knew before January. The last administration wasn't too keen on making all of this stuff accessible to us during the briefings in November and December, pre-Sidon. Well, I knew a little about this subject before, back in 1970. Nixon had all of the good stuff and wanted to share it with some of his friends. Nixon showed me some papers. Not sure about who authored them, but they, well, something about New Mexico and other places. Nixon was pretty, well, fascinated with it. He showed me something, some kind of object or device that came from one of their craft, something that was taken from the New Mexico crash site. I don't know if, well, Do we know what it was? I don't think we knew, or maybe now, after 11 years, we might know. The caretaker. Mr. President, I can answer some of those questions. Do you wish for me to begin? President. Oh, well, what level is this? I mean, what was it called? I don't remember what they called this. WMKC. Mr. President, code word. It's called top secret code word. This information is beyond top secret, as I said before. It has its own classification. It is very compartmentalized. President. Well, I guess just the minimum. Are we recording this? The caretaker. Mr. President, no, unless you wish. W.M. Casey. Yes, it is. CIA female transcriber. Who is doing that? I think we should. I don't want to make any mistakes later about this. Advisor number 4 should also stay, since he is one of the caretakers of the information. President. Well, I don't want anyone leaking this stuff. Not knowing what we are about to discuss? Oh well, Bill, I guess it is your call. Advisor number 4 should stay. I guess he should... Oh, okay, well, you make the call, Bill. WMKC. Okay, I guess advisor number 4 will stay. But I think CIA female transcriber must stay. I'll make that call. President. Okay, I guess we can do our business first. Give me a few minutes. Let's get some food first, or snacks. How long will... Oh, about 1 hour? The caretaker. Mr. President, I estimate this will last about 1 hour, at least the first part of it. This is a very complicated subject to brief. I can do it, but maybe the questions will extend beyond the time period. President. Okay, I see. Let's take a break and then reconvene. Break. The caretaker. Okay, Mr. President, are we ready? President. Yes, we are. Let's go. The caretaker. Mr. President, as was mentioned earlier, I must say that this briefing has the highest classification within the U.S. government. I will start with a slide presentation. I have most of this briefing on the slides, but I also have an outline that I have passed out to each person in attendance. President. Oh, okay. So can we follow it with the outline paper? The caretaker. Yes, Mr. President. You can follow the briefing with the outline in front of you. President. Thank you. The caretaker. The United States of America has been visited by extraterrestrial visitors since 1947. We have proof of that. However, we also have some proof that Earth has been visited for many thousands of years by various races of extraterrestrial visitors. Mr. President, I'll just refer to those visits as ETs. In July 1947,
If you are enjoying this, why not watch the full hour and 20-minute version? In fact, there's over 150 other long documentaries you can watch. They are on my Patreon page. It's only a couple of pounds, and more content is added every week. Find out why Stonehenge is there. Find out who Yahweh really was. Learn that the crystal skulls are not fake. See Easter Island for what it really is. Understand the mark of the beast, and so much more, all with evidence. Head over to patreon.com, Our True History. There's also free documentaries there. Click on collections, then free. Watch an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood. Trust me, you won't find this kind of research anywhere else. Thanks for your support. Our True History.
Breaking news, don't trust mainstream. So here we've got a couple of people in science saying that they've now worked out that the Earth's core is solid metal. However, back when I was at school, they actually said the same thing. Earth's core is solid metal or iron, same thing. And however, other scientists have said, no, it's not all that solid. And then you've got other scientists that say Earth's core is liquid. So when you realise that these mainstream have no idea what they're talking about, watch my videos, because I actually go into the reason why I believe Earth's core was ice, which explains so much more than what mainstream's done. Because Earth's size was totally different. We've got water actually coming up from below the Earth, that's a fact. So everything seems to match my research as opposed to their guesses. So feel free to follow and you'll learn something. What language did the Anunnaki alien race actually speak? Now, this is a cuneiform tablet, Sumerian cuneiform, and the chances are this is the language, even though we have other languages such as Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian, etc. This one, which is the actual oldest as well, is probably the language that the Anunnaki spoke. Now, I'll just play a little bit of a video here for you. So this is a lecture from the Penn Museum.
It's interesting. It's the most interesting language. I'm going to get killed when my colleagues see this on YouTube. It's the most interesting language because it's an isolate. It has no family relatives, living or dead, right? And that it's very interesting in terms of world typology.
So in other words, this language is a one-off language, unlike pretty much most other languages. I think there's a Basque language is also on its own, but this is probably their language.
Caretaker. Mr. President, EBE means extraterrestrial biological entity. It was a code designated to this creature by the U.S. Army back in those days. This creature was not human, and we had to decide on a term for it. So, scientists designated the creature as EBE-1. We also referred to it as Noah. There was different terminology used by various aspects of the U.S. military and intelligence community back then. President, do we or did we have others? The number 1 would seem to indicate we had others. The caretaker, yes, we had others. Back then, the term was EBE and no number designation. We'll explain how the others came into our knowledge. President, okay, sorry, I was just wondering and I guess, well, I'm sure the briefing will cover this. Please continue. The caretaker, all the debris and EBs recovered from the first crash site were taken to Roswell Army Airfield, Roswell, New Mexico. EBE was treated for some minor injuries and then taken to Los Alamos National Laboratories, which was the safest and most secure location in the world. Special accommodations were made for EBE. The debris was eventually transferred to Dayton, Ohio, home of the Air Force Foreign Technology Division. The second crash site wasn't discovered until 1949 by some ranchers. There were no live aliens at this site. All this debris went to Sandia Army Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. President, okay, a question. Regarding the first site, how many aliens were in the spaceship? The caretaker, 5 dead aliens and 1 alive. The bodies of the dead aliens were transported to Wright Field in Ohio and kept in a form of deep freeze. They were later transported to Los Alamos, where special containers were made to keep the bodies from decaying. There were 4 dead aliens in the second crash site. Those bodies were in an advanced state of decaying. They had been in the desert for the past two years. Animals and time got to those bodies. The remains were transported to Sandia Base and eventually onto Los Alamos. We determined both crashed spaceships were of similar design, and the bodies of the aliens were all identical. They looked exactly the same. They had the same height, weight, and physical features. Here are the photographs of the aliens. Pause. President, can we classify them? I mean, can we, well, connect them with anything earthly? The caretaker. No, Mr. President. They don't have any similar characteristics of a human, with exception of their eyes, ears, and a mouth. Their internal body organs are different. Their skin is different. Their eyes, ears, and even breathing is different. Their blood wasn't red, and their brain was entirely different from human. We could not classify any part of the aliens with humans. They had blood and skin, although considerably different than human skin. Their eyes had 2 different eyelids, probably because their home planet was very bright. President, maybe I'm getting ahead, but do we know where they came from? Mars, our system, or where? The caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, We do know where they come from. I can go into this now, or I can wait until it comes up in the briefing. President. No, please continue. I can wait. The caretaker. Thank you, Mr. President. Ebe stayed alive until 1952 when it died. We learned a great deal from Ebe. Although Ebe did not have voice organs like humans, it was able to communicate with an operation performed by military doctors. Ebe was extremely intelligent. It learned English quickly, mainly by listening to the military personnel who were responsible for Ebe's safety and care. Ebe was housed in a special area at Los Alamos and Sandia base. Although many different military doctors, scientists, and a select number of civilians studied Ebe, it never became upset or angry. Ebe helped us learn from all the items found in the 2 crash sites. Ebe showed us how some of the items worked, such as a communications device. It also showed us how various other devices worked. President. Excuse me, but you are referring to this creature as an IT. Did it have a gender? The caretaker. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but yes, it was male. Within Ebe's race, they had males and females. President. Okay, thank you. Please continue. The caretaker. Thank you, Mr. President. Ebe died of what military doctors considered natural causes. I don't think we could really state exactly why Ebe died. Although we had five years to study Ebe, we didn't have any standards to compare Ebe's body with standard medical observations. It was difficult to lose Ebe since it was the most interesting thing we as humans could receive and study. A visitor from another planet. Another world. Ebe did explain where he lives in the universe. We call this star system Zeta Reticuli, which is about 40 light years, 3842 from Earth. Ebe's planet was within this star system. President. Okay, where is this in comparison to something we all know? The caretaker. Well, Mr. President, our closet star is 4 light years away. I can show you the constellation it is in. Alpha Centauri, a yellow star, is the brightest star in the constellation Centaurus, 4.3 light years away. President. No, I wouldn't know much about astronomy. I just thought I could understand the distance. How long did it take this spaceship to get here? The caretaker. Well, Mr. President, I can tell you now, or we can discuss that in another briefing. As Mr. Casey said, this is a complicated subject because there are many levels of compartmentalization. This briefing is just the basic information about a visit to our planet by one particular alien race. President. Well, What? Am I to understand this isn't a full briefing? W.M. Casey. Mr. President, we have different levels of stuff. If we mix it up, I don't think it will make sense, nor will we have time this morning. I understand you have a busy schedule today. President. As the President of the United States, I should know everything, right? Or shouldn't I? If I am to assume this was a briefing of substance, then I should hear all of it. I think this is more important than some other things on my daily calendar, but maybe I'm jumping the gun. If there are some things I shouldn't know, please tell me. W.M. Casey. No, Mr. President. I didn't mean you shouldn't know this stuff. I simply meant we should proceed in an orderly fashion as to the briefing. But it is up to you. We will not hold anything back. President. Advisor number 1. What do you think? Do you know about all this? Advisor number 1. Mr. President, yes. I was briefed many times on this subject matter. As Director Casey stated, this is a very, very complicated subject. I think it took me about 1 year to be fully briefed into all aspects of this matter. There are different areas. The initial crash, an investigative period, some attempt at contact, a disinformation operation to protect this matter, and several other levels. President. Oh, wow. I didn't realize how complicated this was. I'm new at all of this. I have a great responsibility to the citizens of this nation to make decisions based on accurate information presented by my advisors. You, all of you, I won't interfere in your presentation of this information. So, I guess we'll proceed in the order you have chosen. I'm sorry for interrupting in this presentation, but as a person who is interested beyond belief in this, I'll just shut up and wait to ask questions.
If you are enjoying this, Why not watch the full hour and 20-minute version? In fact, there's over 150 other long documentaries you can watch. They are on my Patreon page. It's only a couple of pounds, and more content is added every week. Find out why Stonehenge is there. Find out who Yahweh really was. Learn that the crystal skulls are not fake. See Easter Island for what it really is. Understand the mark of the beast, and so much more, all with evidence. Head over to patreon.com, Our True History. There's also free documentaries there. Click on Collections, then Free. Watch an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood. Trust me, you won't find this kind of research anywhere else. Thanks for your support. Our True History.
Who can you trust as a researcher? I've been asked by a few people who I trust, because obviously I've done videos where I've shown other researchers, well-known researchers, have got things wrong, and I show it with evidence. So people said to me, well, who do I trust? So there's this gentleman here called Praveen Mohan. He's brilliant at looking at the Indian temples and basically showing that it wasn't done by people, it was done by, obviously, the Anunnaki. So, and then there's another gentleman here called Dan McLaren, and he is a religious scholar. He doesn't go so far as to say there are aliens. However, everything that he says does match the ancient texts that basically say that there were aliens. In other words, the gods were Anunnaki. Linda Moulton Howe, very honest person, amazing research in many different fields. And then you've got Michael Tellinger, who is amazing regarding stone circles and the power that comes from them. Breaking news, Garden of Eden has been found, according to this website that really hasn't done any research, because the word Eden is just a pleasurable place, which means there's more than one Eden. And I have actually done the homework. So here on my Patreon page, for a couple of pounds, you get over 150 long documentaries. This is just actual part 2 of the one that's called Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. And here I show that the Garden of Eden, the original Garden of Eden, was where Adam and Eve was for 24 years on a spaceship. Sounds stupid. This is the actual text, by the way, not me making up this text. And watch the documentary. I prove with evidence they were there. And the garden, there was a garden on one of the orbiting spaceships of the Anunnaki. Anyway, they finally got sent down. Watch the video, all with evidence. They get sent down to King Enki's Ziggurat Palace, where there's another garden. So that's why, if you read the books properly, you realise there's 2 gardens at least.
Why so many races on Earth? You could argue, why so many types of dogs? Why is there many types of fish? Or even just say, why do we have types of elephants? African bush elephant, Loxodonta africana. Found in various habitats across sub-Saharan Africa, including savannas, forests, and deserts. African forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. Also found in sub-Saharan Africa, primarily in forested regions of West and Central Africa. It is smaller and more elusive than the African bush elephant. Asian elephant, Elephas maximus. Found in fragmented habitats across various countries in South and Southeast Asia, including India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, and Sumatra. The simple answer would be their ancestor migrated, and over time they evolved in different countries. Could that be the same for us humans? Did the white people and Chinese all start from one ancestor? Mainstream will tell you this. This is mainstream version of why there are different races. However, as you watch on, you'll see simple logic destroys this. One key factor contributing to the diversity of human populations across the globe is human migration and settlement patterns over thousands of years. Different regions of the world have been inhabited by distinct human populations, leading to the development of unique physical characteristics, languages, cultures, and customs. Geographical isolation and environmental factors also played a role in shaping human populations over time. For example, populations living in colder climates may have developed adaptations to withstand cold temperatures, such as lighter skin to absorb more sunlight and produce vitamin D. Additionally, historical events such as colonization, imperialism, slavery, and forced migration have further contributed to the mixing and differentiation of human populations. What a pile of rubbish! That was mainstream's explanation of why there are different races. Why doesn't anyone challenge that? Has no one thought about this logically? Well, now you will have your answer. There is a huge problem here. Homo sapiens appeared 300,000 years ago. This means unless all the different races were created at the same time, such as Asian, white, Indian, etc., and then they all went to different lands, this doesn't seem right, because archaeologists have traced migration patterns. The oldest Homo sapien fossils found outside of Africa are from the Levant region of the Middle East, specifically from sites in modern-day Israel and neighbouring areas. One of the most significant findings is the skull and kafse hominins, which date back to around 120,000 to 90,000 years ago. This means Homo sapiens would have either all been created with different races in Africa 300,000 years ago, or there was one type, such as black people in Africa, and they migrated around 120,000 to 90,000 years ago, and they then changed features and eye shapes, etc., within that time frame as evolution. That doesn't work for me. Remember, mainstream said the races are part of geographical isolation and environmental factors. If this is real, then we couldn't have had all the races start in South Africa, because they would all be the same, as they wouldn't have had geographical isolation and environmental factors. The only other logical way is that there were many types of hominid early humans, and when Homo sapiens did migrate, they bred with the different types of hominids in each country. Can we prove that, for example, China didn't have any Homo sapiens before the Homo sapiens migrated? One of the oldest Homo sapiens skeletons found in China is the Liujiang fossil, also known as the Liujiang skull. This fossil consists of a partial skull.
Breaking news, dinosaurs lived alongside man. Archaeologists in Brazil find petroglyphs alongside dinosaur tracks. Now, this isn't the first of its kind. We have actual footprints with dinosaurs, human footprints with dinosaurs, as well as these petroglyphs all around the world. And we've even got carvings of dinosaurs that no one should have known what they looked like. But in this particular piece, it says that it was around 100 million years ago that these tracks. Now, Homo sapiens were only around for about 3 to 4 million years ago. So one of them's telling little porcupines, and that's because dinosaurs didn't all die out 65 million years ago. We actually have the evidence that they survived a lot longer. And the evidence is here in a documentary that I've made called Dinosaurs Lived with Humans. It's on my Patreon page, and as you know, when I do these documentaries, I don't leave any stone unturned. So if you're interested in seeing the actual evidence.
How the Anunnaki knew about our solar system. The race called gods, we know them as Anunnaki, live on a planet called Nibiru. That planet came from outside our solar system. The tablets for this information is in the British Museum. It's called the Enuma Elish, translated by L.W. King. If you want to read this yourself, type in Enuma Elish PDF on Google. Before I explain how the Anunnaki knew about how our universe was formed, we first need to read through the Enuma Elish. I will keep cutting in explaining things. I hope this won't put you off learning about our solar system.
The first tablet. When in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and Chaos, Tiamut, the mother of them both. Their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen. When of the gods none had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained.
It's believed that the Apsu was the sun, our sun in our solar system. There was water in space. This is what NASA says about water in space. Enormous amounts of water in gaseous form exist in the vast stellar nurseries of our galaxy. The Hubble Space Telescope peered into the Helix Nebula and found water molecules. Hydrogen and oxygen, formed by different processes, combine to make water molecules in the ejected atmosphere of this dying star. This is the translations from the Moore-Hen collection. They are pretty much the same as the Enuma Elish translations, but in an easier format to understand.
When it all started, in the above, there were no gods in the heavens, and in the below, Ki, there was no name for the firm ground. Apsu, their first leader, was all alone in the void. In the heights of the above, there were no celestial gods yet, and in the depths of the below there were no celestial gods either. Apsu ruled the void all by himself. Then his winds mixed the waters of the beginning, and Apsu cast a divine and clever spell over the waters. He slept soundly in the deep of the void. Tiamat, the mother of everything, became his wife. She, indeed, was a mother from heaven and a watery beauty.
The mother of everything isn't the creator of everything. Tiamat was a watery planet. In fact, it was an ice planet. Watch my documentary on the Norse gods, where I explain the Norse myth of a frost giant was in fact Tiamat, the planet.
Apsu's little Mumu then gave birth next to him, and he gave Tiamat a gift to bring to him as his messenger. Only she can have a gleaming metal, gold, that lasts forever.
We are not sure what Mumu was. It could have been a wormhole, portal, dust, or just a huge sun flare, or something else.
Apsu gave this beautiful gift to his wife. Then their waters mixed, and they had divine children to bring into the world. The celestials were created in both male and female forms. Lamu and Lahamu were their given names.
Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven. Lamu and Lahamu were called into being. Ages increased. Then Ansar and Kisar were created.
I have created a family tree on all the planets and their names, and which planet gave birth to which. Please remember, the Anunnaki, gods, always spoke about objects in heaven, which we know is space, as if they were alive. If these planets had personalities and mouths and eyes, this is just how they spoke about them. The first children of Tiamat was Mars and Venus. I'm not sure how a planet can create more planets, but back then, and I'm not talking about 4.5 billion years ago, that's when Nibiru planet came into our solar system. I'm talking about way back when only the sun was here first. I guess as planets were forming, parts may have broke off, creating smaller planets.
And over them, long were the days. Then there came forth Anu, their son.
Apsu and Tiamat constructed a house below. Anshar and Kishar were created in the waters of the above when they were older and taller.
You will hear people on the internet talking about the firmament and how we are under a dome, an invisible dome, and above that is water. This is because they don't research. They have took passages from the Bible and made up stories to fit, instead of actually going back to the original texts. You'll see soon how this firmament is really the asteroid belt.
Ansar and Anu, and the god Anu, Nudimud, whom his fathers, his begetters, abounding in all wisdom. He was exceeding strong. He had no rival. Thus were established and were the great gods. But Tiamat and Apsu were still in confusion. They were troubled and in disorder. Apru was not diminished in might, and Tiamat roared, she smote, and their deeds.
They were taller than their older brothers. The two were created to be a celestial couple, and they had a son named An in the faraway heavens. He was their scion.
The Anunnaki seem to have divided up the solar system into the word heavens. You'll hear shortly how one heaven is inside the asteroid belt, the 3 planets which includes Earth. There might be 7 heavens in our solar system. Kishar and Anshar were Jupiter and Saturn. They had 2 children planets and was Uranus,
and Untu was Neptune.
Then Untu was brought out, who was Un's equal and would be his wife. Their house was built on the outskirts of the upper waters. This is how, below and above, 3 heavenly couples were created in the depths.
If you are enjoying this, why not watch the full version, which explains how the Anunnaki knew about our solar system? In fact, there's over 150 other long documentaries you can watch. They are on my Patreon page. It's only a couple of pounds, and more content is added every week. Find out why Stonehenge is there. Find out who Yahweh really was. Learn that the crystal skulls are not fake. See Easter Island for what it really is. Understand the mark of the beast, and so much more, all with evidence. Head over to patreon.com/OurTrueHistory. There's also free documentaries there. Click on Collections, then Free. Watch an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood. Trust me, you won't find this kind of research anywhere else. Thanks for your support. Our True History.
The Anunnaki were blue-skinned and white and black and looked like reptilians. They had slave workers called the Igigi, and they were from another planet. The Anunnaki created humans and accidentally made giants. Those giants built the pyramids. The Atlanteans were on the moon and had many fights with the Anunnaki. The alien Anunnaki gods had stargates and could go anywhere they wanted. They also made humans all look different around the world. For example, that's why white people don't look the same as Chinese. Of course, Noah's Ark was a spaceship. Any bad researcher will tell you that. Hang on a minute. I've just told you a lot of rubbish. All these theories are from bad researchers. Even normal people on TikTok make videos like this. They get way more views and shares than my videos, which show evidence. If you actually want the evidence instead of people just talking and making up stuff, visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. The difference between me and anyone else out there, I show the evidence, they just talk.
Who do you trust? Mainstream, where they say that Homo sapiens moved to Iraq around 45,000 years ago, or do you believe the tablets that told us about the asteroid belt that we only found out about 200 years ago, but they knew 100,000 years ago that they bred with, the Anunnaki bred with Homo sapiens to create Homo sapiens sapiens in Iraq? So that was 100,000 years ago. So who do you trust? The ancient tablets that tell us stuff that we didn't even know, or mainstream? Let's have a look at mainstream now. So mainstream, oops, scientists may have got miscalculated the global warming timeline. Oops, scientists have no idea really about carbon dating. They don't know whether it's correct or not. Oops, the scientists say that the solid core of the Earth is solid. Oops, it's not that solid after all. So what do you go with? The ancient tablets that tell us stuff that we didn't even know about, or scientists that keep getting things wrong? Follow me, it's a lot easier than listening to mainstream. Breaking news, new article saying that humans spoke earlier than previously thought. That means mainstream's thick again because they keep giving us dates and then telling us that those dates are wrong. So they originally thought it was 200,000 years ago. I will tell you with evidence it was 100,000 years ago in a sec. But now they're saying it's 1.6 million years ago that we started to speak verbally. So in the Columbia University, they have some ancient tablets, cuneiform tablets. Listen to this. This is a translation of that.
She named the boy Adapa, the foundling,
that's
and the
Adam,
girl Titi,
and that's
one
Eve.
with life. Unlike all the other terrestrial children before them, this pair grew up more slowly than humans, but they understood much more quickly. Because of their intelligence, they could speak with words.
There you go. So that's the first time people spoke. So these were the children of Enki and 2 human women, which made Adam and Eve demigods. The world's first children's picture book based on our true history. In other words, the god there, Anunnaki, alien race, with evidence. So next time your children have been shown these kind of books where there's zero evidence and they basically make up stuff, this one actually has the evidence. So at the bottom of each page, it gives you a description of where the evidence is, so children can go and find it. Proper evidence, as you know, I don't mess around. So I will let you guys know when this book's out, and I'm very excited for it. The world's oldest flat earth map. Now this is a Sumerian map, and this circle here is water. And here in the British Museum, that's where it is. It says map of the world. So now flat earthers are going to say, there you go, see, it's got water all the way around it. However, it's actually not the whole world. This here is Euphrates, is Tigris, as it says so here. Now, the reason why they do that is the Anunnaki, who done these maps, actually just put a circle around absolutely everything that they did. So this is actually the Middle East, or Mesopotamia more precisely. So, yeah, so flat earthers, if you see a map that has a circle and maybe water around the outside, it doesn't actually mean there is water outside, because obviously we know the Middle East, Iraq, etc. doesn't have a circle of water. So that's where the maps come from. They make them in circles. This gentleman's been saying that Anunnaki are not real, etc. So this person said that we are from a great ape and Neanderthal, and I said, okay, show me the great ape. And of course he couldn't, so he ended up showing me that chimpanzees have the same DNA as us. And then I said, well, so does fruit flies, bananas and rats. So then this person's basically come back and said that it's called chimpanzee for the second time. We evolved from them 6 to 7 million years ago, so did Neanderthals. Yes, they did. However, Homo sapiens didn't, which is the whole point why we were genetically created by the Anunnaki 300,000 years ago, not millions of years ago. So there's no Homo sapiens back 6.7 million years ago. And we didn't... The problem is there's a missing link, and I keep trying to explain this to this person. There's a missing link, which obviously this person doesn't understand. So, I don't know, I give up sometimes. I think schools need to reteach people things better. Please bear with me on this, you'll find this interesting. So these are Sumerian glyphs. Mainstream say that these glyphs were about 8,000 BC. Now, Sumerians actually had proper writing style. Now, mainstream say that this came along around 3,500 BC. In other words, way later than this. Now, my estimate on when these were written was around 8 to 9,000 BC. And that's because this was after the flood, when the Anunnaki started teaching us things, as written in the same tablets. Now, mainstream can't say that these are that old, because obviously that then screws up all their dates. However, if you watch my videos, you see that their dates are already wrong, and I prove that every time that they keep admitting that their dates are wrong. So, could these glyphs have actually been around the same time? And the reason why I say that is because not everyone back then could learn to read or write. Now, we know that because the actual tablets tell us that they started teaching people in Sumer first, and then they moved on to 4 different territories over thousands of years. So, not everyone could read or write around the whole of the Middle East. Now, what happens if the people that couldn't read or write decided to start using the same style that they've seen, where you push something into clay, but actually just doing pictures instead? In other words, around the same time, for the people that couldn't read or write. That means then that my 8,000 to 9,000 BC would be again correct. And obviously, we know mainstream get things wrong, because here it says that they first thought that humans could talk 200,000 years ago, and now they're saying 1.6 million. That's a huge difference without any evidence whatsoever. So we know mainstream cock up. So could I be right? Now, also interestingly is the possibility that the Chinese actually got their character development from the Sumerian ones that I was just showing you. So this is very interesting as well, because obviously we know that the Chinese dragon is actually based off of the comet, which is what the original word for dragon was. So the original word for a dragon was comet, and of course the long tail and big head of a dragon in China is that of a description of a comet. Breaking news, elongated skull to do with the Vikings. 3 of them have now been found, and they're basically saying that this person would have looked like this and was buried with jewellery, etc., which means they would have been of some nobility, possibly a leader, because you don't normally get buried as well as with jewellery if you're a pauper. Now, it goes even more interesting than that, because you see the red hair that they've depicted her with. Funny enough, this here is an elongated skull in Peru. This here is an elongated skull with red hair in Peru. Now, Akhenaten also had an elongated skull. He was in Egypt. Now, there is a connection between all of them. They all seem to be in charge. Now, Do cover the elongated skulls a tiny bit in a video called Who Jesus' Real Father Was. It's on YouTube, or you can get to it from my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. And I'll be covering the Viking woman in my upcoming 4th video on Norse gods. I did a video where I pointed out this map here, and I'm guessing this person's a flat earther because I basically said in the end that it's not a flat earth map. Anyway, this person's wrote, did you just use the British Museum, which are responsible for the greatest deceptions? Now, I have debunked the British Museum on many videos, and you follow me, so you would know that. However, this wasn't always in the British Museum if you care to read all the information, etc. Now, other scholars have also agreed that this is a map, and so what do you want me to do? How can I prove to you that the museum don't always lie? Yes, they do lie. I proved that with the crystal skulls very well. In fact, if anyone's interested, it's on my Patreon page, a massive documentary proving that the Smithsonian and the British Museum both lie. But sometimes they don't always lie. Otherwise, every single thing would be a lie, and which this person's assuming every single thing they do is a lie, which isn't quite the case.
Are a black race. They look like African Americans.
That voice was someone I don't actually know who was saying that the alien race on one of those cigar-shaped UFOs were a black race. Now, this gentleman here who created Star Trek actually did see a cigar-shaped UFO, and actually there's a lot to do with him and UFOs and working for the government in behalf of looking into UFOs. Anyway, after he saw this cigar-shaped UFO with windows, he then, allegedly, he ended up creating this, which we all know looks a bit similar to the Greys. So were they black people on that craft that this unknown voice was just waffling on about? Or are they Greys, seeing as I've been doing this for 40 years and I've never heard of anyone ever saying a race is black? So, I don't know. I like to go by evidence.
Unfortunately, this person's intelligence doesn't seem to be worthy of being a human. So, I actually say over and over again that the first Homo sapiens, now there's a difference between humans and Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens is a subspecies of human. The first Homo sapien, I say, was black, or as it says in the tablets, red as clay. But we know over in South Africa, which is where they would have been dark-skinned. I actually say the aliens, which are the Anunnaki, are pale-skinned because when you read the tablets and their children have white hair, blue eyes, pale skin, glowing just like their fathers, then you realise that the Anunnaki, who came from a planet further away from the sun, had pale skin. So please don't come out and say stupid things without actually doing your research first. We have gone backwards, haven't we? We have gone backwards.
Have a listen to this.
The moon is called Namu in the ancient Mesopotamian and Babylonian texts. It's in the tablets, and it used to be a moon of an orbiting moonlet of Tiamat.
So he's correct there except for the name. So the original name was actual Kingu, and this is in the Enuma Elish. So the name that he mentioned came way later. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So if you're actually interested in finding out all about our planets and where they came from and what order they came from, I have actually done a family tree of the planets and what they are called in different cultures, etc. So as you can see, it's quite a good one. It's on my Patreon page. Unfortunately, it's only a couple of £, but you get over 150 other documentaries as well, long ones where no one else has ever figured out things. So if you're interested in the family tree of the planets, it's there for you on my Patreon. Oh, this person's trying to tell me certain things, and we had a little debate backwards and forwards, and I asked for evidence, of course, as I do, and obviously this person couldn't provide it. But what this person was saying is that humans left Africa 200,000 years ago, and I said to this person, look, no matter where you look, you will get different dates because mainstream's wrong. That's why this person was upset with me originally, because I said on one of my videos, mainstream are thick. They don't know what they're really talking about, and this person thought that mainstream did. However, this person here is saying that the people left or humans left Africa 200,000 years ago, and I said no matter what you do online, you will see different dates for that. And here we have it, National Geographic. they left between 60 and 90. That's a lot of difference between 200,000. So going back to this person, just follow me. It's a lot easier. Otherwise, you'll get confused by mainstream. That's all I'm saying. I'm not being rude or anything. Just mainstream don't know. Mars died because of Nibiru, the planet, the Anunnaki home planet. Here in science.org, there's an article that says Mars gravity influences our planet's deep ocean currents. So if a small planet like Mars can affect, how would Nibiru affect Mars, being as Nibiru would be nearer to Mars because it goes between Jupiter and Mars. Now Nibiru is supposedly 4 to 10 times the size of Earth. Now, you're going to say there's no way that would happen because mainstream would know there's a planet here. Well, astronomers have found, this is in the Independent, likely evidence of an Earth-sized planet in the solar system and maybe circling the sun. So in other words, even they're admitting there may be a planet. Now obviously they may have the size wrong because they don't want to say that Nibiru, because Nibiru would be an Anunnaki home planet, which means everyone's right. Well, means I'm right. And so that's the orbit it would take. Did you know Planet X, also known as Nibiru, is not actually spelt originally with an extra I? That's why when you have these ancient texts, Enki's journey to Nibiru, that's why people can't find the word Nibiru. Did you know that the Black Sea, actually at the bottom of it, was a lake and it was covered over by the Great Flood with evidence, and there were settlements at the bottom? Did you know that the crystal skulls have only ever been debunked by one person? That person works at the Smithsonian Institute. Did you know the Anunnaki actually gave us barley and goats and sheep, all with evidence? I can show all of this. Did you know that the crystal skulls that are deemed to be fake in the 3 museums around the world that they have, actually have them on show? So much for them being fake. Now you can find all of this out on my website with evidence, ourtruehistory.co.uk, plus so much more. I'll see you there. Breaking news, lost underwater city discovered could rewrite the history of civilization. So basically they found this city back in 2000, but the breaking news part of it is that they say now that they believe it's 9,500 years old, which they say that can't happen. Obviously we know Göbekli Tepe is now older than what mainstream say could actually be anything to do with civilization. So in other words, we know, between me and you, we know that humans were around, or Homo sapiens were around 300,000 years ago, and then 100,000 years ago the Anunnaki bred with those humans to create Homo sapiens sapiens, which were the modern humans. So, to match whether or not this date works, go to my Patreon page. It's free of charge. All you have to, you don't even have to sign up. Click on collections, click on free, and you will get an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood, done by myself. And you will see the evidence that the flood happened and that it was the time. Amazing news, the flood video that shows that the Anunnaki were involved is now finished, and it's on my Patreon page. So once you're in Patreon, just type in Our Truth for the creator, and then go down to collections. And then once you're on collections, you'll see many different subjects. One of them is free, so click on the free one, so you don't even have to pay, you don't even have to join. And basically here, you have an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood with evidence. Now, you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I don't mess around. Now, in fact, if you also want to see the video that proves the Anunnaki were the gods in the Bible, just scroll down. Again, it's free. It's 34 minutes here. It's actually 3 hours long. The other bits are the ones where you'd have to pay on Patreon, but it's only a couple of pounds anyway. I mean, you spend more on a bottle of Coke. So there's over 150 other documentaries that you'll never find the information for. So this one here, Norse, amazing.
The handbag, I believe, symbolises the knowledge that the Atlantean beings...
I've already covered what the Anunnaki bags were. This is ancient text translated, as you can see here. And yes, they had leather bags. They say it all the time. So instead of making up stuff, I'm not saying the guy did, but instead of just believing what you want to believe, if you do a little bit of research, you'll find the evidence. They had bags. So in the Cairo Museum, or Egyptian Museum, they actually do have a bag that is the same bag that the Anunnaki had. However, I can't find my picture, but I have done a video already on it before showing the bag, which is identical to the one that he's referring to. So sometimes it's probably, let's just be honest, it's probably easier to follow me and get the evidence than it is for
coming up with your own thoughts. Sorry, don't hate me for that. I'm just saying it's easier. The Valkyrie, Valhalla, Aesir and Vanir. These are what I've now covered in my latest new video called Norse Gods Part 3. I've already proved in my first two with evidence what the Frost Giant was, who the Anunnaki were in relation to the Norse gods, and now this third one actually covers the Aesir, Vanir and Valkyries and Valhalla, which I didn't even know I was going to be looking into until I did this amazing research with evidence. So I think I've actually worked out what Valhalla is and who was actually in charge of it. So it's not what you think. And this video is literally just been released 2 seconds ago. And it's on my Patreon page, patreon.com/OurTrueHistory. Bear in mind there's over 150 other long documentaries. This one's 17 minutes, the other two videos, so it's nearly an hour long already, and there's going to be 5 parts in total of the Norse Gods videos. So feel free to go and watch with evidence. The Sphinx was built just after the Great Flood, 10,000 BC. Listen to this from the translations of the Moorhen collection tablets, ancient tablets that's in the Columbia University.
The deluge was predicted to occur in Shah's 121-year-old year. In the 10th Shah of Ziusutra's life, the deluge was approaching, and an avalanche loomed in the constellation of the Lion.
Constellation of the Lion. So, if you watch my flood video on my Patreon page, it's free of charge. Just click collections and click free. You'll see that the flood did happen, and with evidence. And if you actually go to my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk, and scroll all the way down to where it says click here in big blue letters, you'll see that the texts say that Ningazida built the Sphinx at that time. So in other words, everything matches to 10,000 BC. Breaking news. Ancient cities in Pacific were much older than previously thought. And they're basically going on to say that it's now around 700 years older than what they originally thought. I won't bother going into this. This is on the Independent. It doesn't really say too much other than the fact that mainstream keep getting their dates wrong. And I've been saying this for a very, very long time. If you actually want the real dates of things, because mainstream, even though I give dates, later on mainstream admit that their dates are wrong and they actually match my dates. So it's easier just to follow me. So I do have a website, and you can watch my videos on TikTok about ancient history as well as modern aliens, etc. I cover it all. OurTrueHistory.co.uk. I've been researching for 40 years. I've done things that no one else has ever done. Found out where Atlantis is with evidence. Found out who Yahweh was with evidence. Who Jesus, your real father, is with evidence, etc., etc. All with evidence. You can just go to my website and have a look. If you want the proof of the Anunnaki with all gods in the Bible, just click here. The Y-Files video on the Anunnaki is just basically a lot of stuff that's rubbish. I'm not saying it in a bad way, because I love the guy's videos, but it's just, I don't know where he's got the information from. It's not actual evidence. In fact, the first problem we've got is he says that pretty much most things are based off of Zecharia Sitchin, which is totally untrue. First of all, Zecharia Sitchin said he never translated anything. He could translate, but the information that he got for his books was actually based off of other translations. Now, I prove all of that on my video on my website and on my YouTube channel. Just type in proof Anunnaki were here, proof they were gods, or type in the Lost Book of Our True History, and you'll see that I don't actually even go by Zecharia Sitchin. I go by everything else. So unfortunately, his hour-long program is literally just full of errors. So I'm going to have to do a long video, probably over an hour video, showing all the errors that he's made. Sorry, no. More proof that the Anunnaki were here. I've now found something that I hadn't found before. Yes, I don't know everything, but I'm probably one of the best out there. So this is from the Kingship in Heaven. These are the names of the tablets. So you can actually look up these tablets. This is translations of those tablets. And this is where Alula is overthrown by Anu. So we actually have the tablets and we have the translations. This is it. Alula was king in heaven. Mighty Alula, king in heaven. Now bear in mind, the guy here said Alula was just the title, but it's not, clearly. The throne of kingship was his, meaning Alula. The scepter of command is in his hand. So that's where we get the crown and scepter, by the way, everybody. By the strong god Anu arose against him. See, his name's already Anu. Please, Y-Files, you should have come to me. Anyway, you can carry on reading that if you want. You can just pause it, and I will let you read that. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. The Y-Files video on the Anunnaki is about 95% wrong with no evidence shown. I've just done a video that is 50 minutes long showing evidence where his comments are wrong. It's on my YouTube channel if you're interested. Did you know the 3 crystal skulls in 3 different museums were all donated? No one actually made any money. Did you know Valhalla is actually in South Africa? I can show this with evidence. Did you know that mermaids were first mentioned by the Anunnaki, the alien race? Did you know that no bodies were ever found in pyramids? Did you know that Ragnarok actually already happened about 10,000 BC? I can show this with evidence. Did you know Enki told Noah to build the boat? Not God, Enki. I can show that with evidence. Did you know that God didn't create the heaven and earth? It was actually God's preparing the heavens and the earth. This is in Young's literal translation, which is direct from the Hebrew, not all the other versions that's changed. Do you want to find out whether the Yowie is actually the same as the American Bigfoot? Well, I can give you all those answers in my website. So all you have to do is just visit ourtruehistory.co.uk, type in what you want to see at the top, and I have loads and loads of videos that you... Anunnaki were the gods in the Bible. That's been proven. Here is translations from the tablets in the Columbia University, which tell us that evolution happened on their planet as well.
Enki said that there are bipedal beings in the Abzu. Their forelegs act as arms, and they have hands. They dwell among the fauna of the steppe. They are conscious that they should not wear clothes. They ingest plants via their lips, drink lake water, and dig ditches. The whole of their body is covered in hair, and their head resembles a lion's. With gazelles they tussle, and with a profusion of aquatic life they find enjoyment. The chiefs listened to Enki's remarks with astonishment. Edinburgh has never before witnessed something like that, Enlil disbelieving said. On Nibiru, our forefathers may have resembled this millennia ago, Ninmar was saying.
The Great Flood. I'm excited to tell everyone I'm doing an edited video, long documentary on the Great Flood, and it covers everything from the Anunnaki creating humans and to the reason why the Anunnaki allowed the flood to happen, and the fact that Enki did tell Ziazudra, which was Noah, to build the ark, and it covers absolutely everything, the shape of the ark, evidence as to whether or not there was a flood and so on. It's amazing documentary. As I say, I'm editing it right now, so I will let you know when it's all finished so you guys can watch it. Breaking news. Woodhenge is as old as Stonehenge. According to this, they've now realised that it's actually 300 years old earlier than previously thought, which means mainstream knows nothing and I still know more than them. Why do I know more than them? Well, this was dated 13th of April. My video on the Stonehenge was dated February 16th. So I actually already solved that as well as other parts. Now, interestingly, there's a new discovery here in a place called Anchorchurch Field, located at Crowland, which has got another henge that they've just found. Now, interestingly, yes, not too far from there is an here would have been an ancient mine. Now you're thinking, what's an ancient mine got to do with Stonehenge? Watch my video. It's on my Patreon page. I've solved it. You'll find that the henges are near mines, and I explain it all in this 30-minute long documentary on my Patreon page if you're interested. New barrier reef find proves Australians didn't learn pottery from Europe. Now, I know this sounds boring, but bear with me because I want your thoughts on this. So basically, if you read the whole article, it basically says that they found some pottery near the barrier reef or in the barrier reef, and they seem to think that it belongs to New Zealand and so on and so on, and therefore it wasn't from Europe. In other words, people from Europe didn't come and teach them how to create pottery, which they originally thought. Now, my argument is, unless they were actually there, how do they not know that someone went over and taught these people and the New Zealand people? In fact, there could have been people there. Just because they don't have skeletons of Europeans doesn't mean that no one went there. So in other words, they're assuming again, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know that their dates are always wrong. So what do you think? Assuming, or are they facts?
Did you know we now have the evidence to show who the Norse gods were in relation to the Anunnaki? We now know the 10 plagues of Egypt started in Israel, and the aftermath was in Egypt. We have evidence that Lilith didn't know Adam at all, but she did know Adamu. One amazing researcher has worked all this out, and even worked out the trumpets in the Bible were rockets or missiles. The same researcher has produced a video with evidence proving the Bible was a copy of the older Anunnaki texts, the race called gods. He's even given evidence as to why the Nazca mountain range was sliced off, and so many more world's firsts. But before you put the laughing faces icon, why not watch just one of these amazing documentaries? Simply visit our truehistory.co.uk and scroll down to where it says click here. Then if you have evidence to prove his evidence wrong, he would love to see it. If you can't, then maybe watch his other videos and learn about our true history.
The mark of the beast. We know the Anunnaki were the gods in the Bible. Well, that's proven. So I have actually already done videos on the Book of Revelations, part 1 and part 2 on my Patreon page, where I prove with evidence that the events in Book of Revelation actually happened in the past, and it's not talking about future events. That's on my Patreon page if you're interested. But I haven't covered the mark of the beast. So I'm going to do a deep dive now on the mark of the beast. And if you've watched any of my other videos where I've solved who Yahweh was, who Jesus' father was, what Stonehenge was for, basically I've covered so many things. And normally, including the Norse gods, I've managed to conclude what they are. So with luck, I can figure out what the mark of the beast was. And when I say was, because as we know, the Anunnaki are no longer technically here. They may be in the background, but they wouldn't be telling us about the mark of the beast for the future because they couldn't foresee the future like that. So keep watching. Who loves the Y-Files? His 3-point-something million subscribers do. Now, I don't want them telling me that I'm wrong, because he's done a video called Anunnaki Gods from Planet Nibiru, where 95% of it is actually just all wrong, made up sort of stuff. And unfortunately, I had to do a video, which is this one here, the Y-Files Anunnaki video wrong on YouTube if you want to watch it, and mine's 50 minutes long. I could have gone on and went through every single thing that he's done wrong, but that's enough. And what I cover is where he says Anu was the title of King Anu. It wasn't. I show evidence it wasn't. He says the Yajiji was another type of alien race and that they were slaves. Again, I've got all the evidence in ancient texts, etc., that tells you that they were the younger Anunnaki. He says almost all the ancient information from the Anunnaki comes from Zecharia Sitchin, which does not, absolutely categorically does not, which I prove totally beyond the shadow of a doubt. Anyway, it's on my website, Our True History. Breaking news, ancient monument unlike anything archaeologists have seen before, unearthed in France. And if you have a look down here, they say it's around 3,000 years old and they don't actually know what it was for. However, that's because they're not very clever. Now, if you look at the Karnak stones, also in France, that go on for a mile or so, they are actually power distribution lines, which sounds stupid. And so power goes from one to another using the Earth's grid. Now, Michael Tellinger is this gentleman here. He's proven that the Adams calendar in South Africa actually still produces energy as power. And normally it goes off on a line. And here, if you look carefully at the actual image, look at that. This is the one that they found and they don't know what it's for. Now look at this. Same design. So if you're interested in seeing the evidence that these are power stones or power devices, go to michaeltellinger.com, watch his videos. Let me show you why my videos with the evidence are the best. Because here's one of my older videos, wait for it. So this is 2 years old with only 6,000 views. So if you copy any of my titles, copy, okay, and then you go to Google and you just paste. There it is, and then you search. Doesn't come up, does not come up. You scroll down, you do this any of my video titles, copy and paste, and the only one that actually does come up is way down here. There's a BitChute one that I did, so there it is. Now if you try that with someone else's, so for example Billy Carson's, you can do it with any title, it doesn't matter what's in the title. Now this one's got 53 and it's newer, so we do the same here. You can do it with any of my videos, and his one comes up first. So my videos have evidence. YouTube are blocking them. Feel free to follow. Did you know the Anunnaki created the Great Pyramid with a hole at the top to allow a light beam to go all the way into space? Did you know that the Anunnaki, who created us humans, tried 6 times before they managed to get the first one correct? This one here is missing a you-know-what, and they called it Nibru Enoch. And basically that means crossing. That's why it's got neither genitals, and it was a mistake. Did you know that the tablet that Enki tells Noah, or Ziusudra as his original name was, is in the British Museum? In other words, it wasn't God telling him. Did you know that the actual original word for comet is a dragon? That's why it's got a head. Did you know that the horns on a dragon is actually the horns that's called that on comets? Go look it up. Did you know the Emerald Tablets of Thoth actually talk about light energy beings and dark energy beings such as the jinn? You can find all of this out on my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. So many more videos there. You'll have. Archaeologists discover what may be the oldest known piece of bread. Now, here it says it's around 6,600 years old. However, in these ancient tablets, we've got here the description of when Enki and Nimna were creating us humans, us creatures. And here it says, I have decreed the fates of your creatures and given them their daily bread. Now, anyone that's religious knows the word daily bread. And that comes from before the Bible. This comes from way before the Bible. This comes from 300,000 years ago. The text wasn't actually written 300,000 years ago, but the description of what they said was from 300,000 years ago. And in fact, here they even say that they bring us wheat to make beer. And they have a shrine to Nibiru. Now, people will probably know that that's supposed to be spelt with an extra I, Nibiru, but it's not. Actually, most translators give it Nibiru. So there was a shrine on Earth to Nibiru, the planet. Follow me, you'll learn so much more. The Y-Files. He's finally done a video on the Anunnaki. Now, I have sent him a few messages in the past, whether or not he read them, whether or not he just ignored them, saying, I'm happy to give you any advice. Never got a reply. That's no problem. I mean, I do love his show. I do watch his show. The problem is I'm quite good with the Anunnaki, and obviously he's put this video out there and it's already gained loads and loads of watchers. Nearly over 500,000 watchers within a few hours. So I don't want people to say that I'm wrong because they've watched his videos. So I will have to watch his video, and I will have to do a video to show if he's got any errors, where those errors are, because it's not fair on me that people come to me because he's more well known than me, saying that I'm wrong. So it doesn't mean just because he's more well known that he's right. So I will be doing a video. Hopefully I won't, but I will if there is errors. I have a feeling you want to share this, the Lord's Prayer, but based off of the Anunnaki version, which the Bible actually copied. Our Father, which art in heaven. So who's our Father? Enki, the great Lord, who can equal your actions like the corporeal Father. This is in the tablet translations Enki and Nimna, which predates the Bible. Hallowed be thy name. Now, where would we get the first word for hallowed from? There we are. Hallowed. Translation for the lament of Nibiru, which was actually Nibiru. Thy kingdom come. Now, where would we get the word kingdom from? Yes, another translation here from there. So it's all starting to make sense now, isn't it? Give us our daily bread. Surely the Anunnaki don't talk about daily bread. And yes, this is where Enki and Nimna have created these first creatures, which is us Homo sapiens. I have decreed the fates of your creatures and given them their daily bread. Yes. And where are we now? And forgive us our debts. Now, surely the Anunnaki don't talk about debts. Yes, here's another translation from the building of Ningsergu's temple, and it's talking about paying off debts, etc. So everything that the Bible says, we've actually got the original text for. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Surely the Anunnaki don't talk about, oh yes, they do. Here's reversed evil. So there's so many mentions of the word evil, as you can probably see in ancient translations there. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever. Amen. Now, if you want to know who Amen is, you can just watch this video here. It's called Who Yahweh Really Was. You'll find out that Amen was actually the same name as Amun, which was Amun-Ra, which you'll find out was Marduk. So if you're interested, this is on my Patreon page, Who Yahweh Really Was. It's a 20-minute documentary with evidence. Amen. The Mark of the Beast, the actual documentary, is now literally just been released on my Patreon page. Now, I look at the Mark of the Beast from the perspective of the Anunnaki being gods. Now, we know that's true because we've proven that the gods in the Bible were actually the Anunnaki. So this is the world's first where actually someone looks at it from the perspective of who would have been the beast at the time that this was being written. In other words, was it one of the Anunnaki, and which one was it? And I cover all of that in this 30-minute documentary that's on my Patreon page. And as always, I give my conclusion at the end, and as always, I show evidence. Enjoy. Breaking news. Scientists now say they have found evidence of an unknown planet in our solar system, which means the Anunnaki home planet, Planet X, is actually real. And this was mentioned first in these tablets that predate the Bible in the British Museum called the Anunnaki. And it talks about a planet that comes out from our solar system, comes into our solar system 4.5 billion years ago, and has an elliptical orbit and goes between Jupiter and Mars. But at that time there was a planet called Tiamat that was huge and a water planet, and it smashed into Tiamat, which broke Tiamat up, and part of it became Earth and part became the asteroid belt. And now Nibiru, the planet that now has been proven that it's real, still keeps coming around every 3,600 years. Now people will say, well, hang on a minute, how come ancient texts don't mention the word Nibiru? That's because Zachariah Sitchin translated it, or the Moorhen collection translated it with an extra I. Watch my documentary on my Patreon page and I prove Nibiru's mention. The Y-Files has sent me a message. So I did a video where I was showing that some errors in the Y-Files video, and I did actually try and contact them, but never got really a message back. Anyway, AJ's wrote, very entertaining and educational. That was to do with my video. That's on YouTube if you're interested. The Y-Files is an entertainment channel. It's supposed to be fun. I talk to a fish. My job isn't to prove anyone right or wrong. I just gather the information I can and leave it out for the viewer to decide. Sorry I missed your email, but keep up the great work. Honestly, I do love his show. I just watched the latest one yesterday. I do worry about Gertie. I don't know if she's being fed enough. If you know the Y-Files, you know what I mean. But no, it's a lovely email message. Obviously, I do get a lot of people say to me that I'm wrong because they do listen to other researchers, and of course, I have to then point out where I'm right. But that was lovely. Thank you very much. I love your show. The planet Nibiru, that's owned by the Anunnaki race named gods, that comes in between Jupiter and Mars and then goes back out to the edge of the solar system. A lot of people say, well, hang on a minute, how can their planet survive that far out in the cold? Here is a translation from the Columbia University where they actually have the tablets. So have a listen to this.
Nibiru is a giant planet with a reddish brilliance that orbits the Sun in an extended orbit. Nibiru spends some time in the cold. The Sun strongly heats it for a portion of its orbit. Dense atmosphere Nibiru is continuously nourished by volcanic outbursts. This atmosphere supports many lives. Without it, there would be just perishing. The core heat of Nibiru surrounds the globe throughout the cold season like an ever-renewing warm cloak.
Notice globe, not flat. Our True History timeline. Yes, I've actually done a timeline for Our True History, starting way back from when the solar system started, right up to Jesus, in fact. And as you probably can tell, it's massive. So it includes, obviously, the Anunnaki, etc., and what happened and when. So all you have to do is just click on the end of each row, and then it carries on and on. As you see, it goes down further and further and further, and so on and so on. So all you have to do is visit my Patreon page, and if you're new to it, just click collections. There's actually free stuff here as well if you're interested, so you can go and watch that. We don't even have to sign up. You can watch an hour-long documentary on the flood, etc. But if you're after this particular timeline, it's under the family trees. So you just click on that. It's a couple of pounds to watch. Obviously not the free ones. The free ones are free, but a couple of pounds to watch over 150 long documentary. Breaking news. It says in Science Alert, experiment prepares to test a possible second purpose for Stonehenge. So I actually thought, wow, they've actually watched my amazing Stonehenge documentary on my Patreon page and have actually finally understood what... Anyway, they haven't watched my video because basically they waffle on about it being a calendar, which it is. But the problem that they're talking about is there's a second calendar. Long story, go read the article. But how stupid are mainstream? Because in order for people that didn't live anywhere near here, there was no settlements found whatsoever, people would have needed to have a mini calendar in their home to know to come here, because they're basically on about people coming here to worship. People would need to have had their own watch back then. They didn't. So they would have needed their own calendar to come to see the solstice, which they could have just done with their mini calendar. Ah, stupid people. So if you actually want the evidence of why Stonehenge was made, go to my Patreon page and watch the video called Stonehenge.
Who Yahweh really was. Documentary with evidence from our true history.
I'll start with the premise that Yahweh is not an almighty being. The reason why he's not is because the video I done called The Lost Book of Our True History proves the gods were an alien race that we know as Anunnaki. Their race name is God, just like we are human. Please watch that video if you need to see the evidence that the Bible copied the older texts. Yahweh is named for the God of the Israelites. Why not the God of the universe? That's because there were many gods, many Anunnaki.
If Yahweh is not an almighty being, and the only ones on earth that were called gods were the Anunnaki, it stands to reason that one of the Anunnaki was Yahweh. Many Anunnaki names have been given to Yahweh, and some have even said who I'm going to say it is, but I'll be the only one to give the connecting evidence.
Let's first look at the first mention of Yahweh. I'm using a clip from a video called Who is Yahweh? How a Warrior Storm God Became the God of the Israelites and World Monotheism on YouTube by Dr. Justin Sledge on his channel Esoterica.
In fact, this god, whose simple name means something like the one that exists, emerged from the sands of Bronze Age obscurity to eventually become not just a national god, but, in the end, simply the god.
In the early stages of Israelite religion, El is often mentioned as a prominent deity. The name El is a generic Semitic term for god or deity and was used in various ancient Near Eastern cultures. El is associated with a fatherly figure, often depicted as the head of the pantheon. Over time, there seems to have been a theological shift, and the worship of Yahweh gained prominence among the ancient Israelites. The process of monotheization, where a polytheistic pantheon transforms into a monotheistic belief system, likely played a role in the development of the Israelite religion. I'm breaking down the differences between El and Yahweh now, so that later on you'll understand why the two are connected. Let's start with El. He was usually portrayed as an old man with a long beard and often 2 wings. That's interesting because in Sumerian carvings, some of the Anunnaki were carved with wings. Why would a god in need to be depicted with wings? I can't think of a reason, but let's look at why the Anunnaki would have been shown with wings. That also goes for the Egyptian gods, who were also Anunnaki. Wings in many ancient cultures are often symbolic of divine attributes and supernatural power. The inclusion of wings with the Anunnaki may signify their elevated, otherworldly status and their association with the divine realm. In some depictions, winged beings are associated with messengers or intermediaries between the earthly and celestial realms. The wings may symbolize the ability to traverse between different realms, conveying messages or acting as intermediaries between gods and humans. Wings can also be associated with celestial bodies, such as birds representing the sky or heavenly beings. By depicting the Anunnaki with wings, artists may have sought to convey a connection between these deities and cosmic forces, emphasizing their influence over natural and celestial realms. That makes a lot of sense. The main gods, Anunnaki, needed to show they were from heaven, which has been proven to mean space. I think we can agree that the reason El would have been shown with wings is because El was one of the main Anunnaki. But what about the long beard? El is said to have had a long beard before he became very old and frail and shaved it off. Why does an almighty being need a beard? I can't think of a reason, can you? But what about the Anunnaki? Did they have beards? Absolutely. It was a huge status for them to have beards. This is starting to look like El was one of the main Anunnaki. But which one? The clue is his age, the god named El, seems to only be used as an old god. Who could have been an old Anunnaki god around that time? The time El was first mentioned is about 3,000 years ago. That's 1,000 years before Christ. There is no Anunnaki by the name of El, but the Anunnaki did change their own names many, many times. Ea became Enki, for example, and Inanna was her Sumerian name, but Akkadians called her Ishtar. Who would have been a main god that would be old and would have had wings? Enlil was a major deity in the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon, particularly in Sumerian and Akkadian, Babylonian and Assyrian stories. His name, Enlil, means Lord Wind in Sumerian, reflecting his association with the forces of nature, particularly wind and storm. But if Enlil was El and was old and frail, where does Yahweh come into this? I hear you ask. Before I get to Yahweh, I must let you know Enlil had a wife called Ninlil. But did El have a wife? Asherah is the name that appears to be his wife. Could that wife have been Ninlil? But because their region around 3,000 years ago, they were worshipped in the Canaanite and Ugaritic traditions, meaning they may have had different names, just like Inanna and Ishtar. I'll cover Asherah a little later. She is important to Yahweh rise in power as the main god. Around 4,000 years ago, there were wars between the Anunnaki. They used the humans to fight their battles. In some cases, they even used nukes. See my other videos for evidence. One Anunnaki called
The rest of this documentary, including the real name of Yahweh, is on the Patreon page. There is over 150 other long documentaries there with answers to subjects like, why was Stonehenge put exactly there? Why Easter Island statues were not made by man? Who the Norse gods were? The list goes on. Jump over to the Patreon page, patreon.com, Our True History, or visit my website where you can get to everything from there, ourtruehistory.co.uk.
Did you know that some people believe Akhenaten was Moses? In the British Museum we have Akhenaten's parents and grandparents, whereas Moses, no one actually even knew who they were, so that ends that. Did you know back in ancient times Marduk wanted monotheism? In other words, there were many gods and wanted everyone to just believe in him. Funny, it says the same in the Bible. Did you know that elongated skulls and headbound skulls are biologically different? In fact, there was a baby that was still found in a mother's womb in ancient times that had the alien type elongated skull, meaning no one headbound the baby while in the mother's womb. And did you know you can find all this information out, plus so many more, on my website with all these videos, hundreds of them, if not thousands. And did you know the Anunnaki built their cities in concentric circles, just like Plato said the Atlanteans did? And you can find, again, all of this information out from my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk, or follow me on TikTok. Why do the aliens that we hear about have arms and legs just like us? Well, let's have a look at what we know about us humans. Why are humans here? The journal blah 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 says that there have been approximately 8.7 billion species on Earth, different species. Hundreds of thousands of those species with more than 4 legs. In total, the number of species of primary bipedal on Earth, walking on 2 legs, is likely to range in the thousands. So in other words, we're getting less and less down to 2 arms and 2 legs. Some group of animals have already shown propensity for bipedal, basically bears could over a very long period of time actually become just like us. Now, interestingly, in this study here, it says that because we walk upright, we're never going to have huge children. In other words, we're not going to be like the size of an elephant or a dinosaur, and that's because we walk upright. Interesting. Ragnarok has been solved. Now, if you've watched my other previous videos on the Norse mythology, you'll see that I've connected who they were in Sumerian, what the frost giant was, all with evidence. And I'm actually currently right now working on Ragnarok, and I was a bit unsure where I was going with this. It wasn't until the translations of the Poetic Edda talks about, yes, the golden gaming pieces, which was after Ragnarok, and my brain said, no, you don't look for gold or find gold and worry about playing games, because the Anunnaki, after the Great Flood, which was caused, basically was the first Ragnarok, they needed gold still to sprinkle in their atmosphere. And of course, the word that where it says gaming pieces in Norse actually also translates into life pieces, which makes so much more sense. The video is going to be out this weekend. Hope you enjoy. Has anyone watched Beyond Skinwalker Ranch? There's an episode where a woman uses a 1.6 gigahertz receiver and transmitter to broadcast, and she gets a reply at a 1.6 gigahertz frequency. So in other words, something's out there that replied when she said, is anyone out there? And now that's the end of that. They didn't pursue it. Now, if it was me, I would have then said, okay, lower the 1.6 or get rid of the 1.6. I'm going to start asking you questions. If you answer yes, then make the 1.6 gigahertz frequency go up, and if it does, if it's not, then don't answer and don't make it go up. So they could have actually done a lot more instead of just doing that. So I don't know, maybe I should be on their show helping them. Does anyone want to see a real timeline of our true history? This isn't my one, this is just one that I'm showing. Mine's going to be way better than this. Now, in fact, mine's actually going to be true. So if you watch any of my videos, you'll see that mainstream keep changing their dates. And they change their dates to the dates that I've already said. So which means my timeline is actually correct. So mine's going to be going through all of this, but far more better detail than this type of thing here. So if you're interested, let me know in the poll so I can decide whether or not to do one. Thank you. Alien hybrids. This is Linda Moulton Howe. She said on one of her videos, which I can't find now, but she did say that 30 million hybrids from the greys stroke tall whites are here on Earth, and they are here to help us. However, my argument is, if you want to help us, don't put 30 million people that's going to now contribute to global warming, that's also going to be stealing our food, our houses, etc. If you want to help us, aliens, then give us the anti-gravity technology, medical advances, etc. You do not need to put 30 million people or hybrids back on our planet. So in other words, although I believe Linda Moulton Howe, I don't believe the aliens. They're not doing that to help us. You don't stick 30 million hybrids on a planet to help us when they haven't helped us. I'm still skint, so absolutely ridiculous. So basically, do not trust the aliens. They're not here to help us, and the hybrids won't be here to help us either. Lots of my paranormal videos are on my website, just to let everyone know, ourtruehistory.co.uk. You just click on videos, or you can actually search for specific things. Now, I've also now changed the button up here to Patreon, and the reason why I've done that is because some people say, how do I get to your Patreon site? So on the Patreon site, or on this page here, you can actually see that you can actually watch free videos. Just click here. But there's also over 150 long documentaries where you just have to pay a couple of pounds, I'm afraid. But let's just look at what I have wrote about the ones that you can watch for a few pounds. Stonehenge is solved. Easter Island, evidence that the statues were there before the flood. Who Yahweh was is solved. Who Lilith was. Who El and Asherah was. The Great Flood is solved. Honestly, it is. That's one of the free ones you can go watch. Norse frost giants were solved. Gods were Anunnaki from Norse. Yes, Valhalla's definitely been solved. They're all definitely with evidence. You know that. The gods in the Bible were Anunnaki. Mermaids were... Why so many races on Earth? You could argue, why so many types of dogs? Why is there many types of fish? Or even just say, why do we have types of elephants? African bush elephant, Loxodonta africana. Found in various habitats across sub-Saharan Africa, including savannas, forests, and deserts. African forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. Also found in sub-Saharan Africa, primarily in forested regions of West and Central Africa. It is smaller and more elusive than the African bush elephant. Asian elephant, Elephas maximus. Found in fragmented habitats across various countries in South and Southeast Asia, including India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, and Sumatra. The simple answer would be their ancestor migrated, and over time they evolved in different countries. Could that be the same for us humans? Did the white people and Chinese all start from one ancestor? Mainstream will tell you this. This is mainstream version of why there are different races. However, as you watch on, you'll see simple logic destroys this. One key factor contributing to the diversity of human populations across the globe is human migration and settlement patterns over thousands of years. Different regions of the world have been inhabited by distinct human populations, leading to the development of unique physical characteristics, languages, cultures, and customs. Geographical isolation and environmental factors also played a role in shaping human populations over time. For example, populations living in colder climates may have developed adaptations to withstand cold temperatures, such as lighter skin to absorb more sunlight and produce vitamin D. Additionally, historical events such as colonization, imperialism, slavery, and forced migration have further contributed to the mixing and differentiation of human populations. What a pile of rubbish! That was mainstream's explanation of why there are different races. Why doesn't anyone challenge that? Has no one thought about this logically? Well, now you will have your answer. There is a huge problem here. Homo sapiens appeared 300,000 years ago. This means unless all the different races were created at the same time, such as Asian, white, Indian, etc., and then they all went to different lands, this doesn't seem right, because archaeologists have traced migration patterns. The oldest Homo sapien fossils found outside of Africa are from the Levant region of the Middle East, specifically from sites in modern-day Israel and neighbouring areas. One of the most significant findings is the skull and kafse hominins, which date back to around 120,000 to 90,000 years ago. This means Homo sapiens would have either all been created with different races in Africa 300,000 years ago, or there was one type, such as black people in Africa, and they migrated around 120,000 to 90,000 years ago, and they then changed features and eye shapes, etc., within that time frame as evolution. That doesn't work for me. Remember, mainstream said the races are part of geographical isolation and environmental factors. If this is real, then we couldn't have had all the races start in South Africa, because they would all be the same, as they wouldn't have had geographical isolation and environmental factors. The only other logical way is that there were many types of hominid early humans, and when Homo sapiens did migrate, they bred with the different types of hominids in each country. Can we prove that, for example, China didn't have any Homo sapiens before the Homo sapiens migrated? One of the oldest Homo sapiens skeletons found in China is the Liujiang fossil, also known as the Liujiang skull. This fossil consists of a partial skull.
Everyone's going to love this, including religious people. So this person's saying that the Anunnaki proclaim that they are gods, therefore pretending that they're gods, even though I did say that the original words for gods and God actually comes from them. It predates the Bible, and it talks about the Anunnaki on their home planet as gods, because that's their race name. Anyway, this person is still trying to say that the gods pretended that they were gods. The problem is, there's no need to pretend. We wouldn't have known anything. We have the tablets where the Anunnaki created us. You can go look them up on the Oxford University website, or type in Enki and Nimna. We know they created us. They didn't need to pretend they're gods. We wouldn't know what a god was. Do you see my point? This is why people are I give up. Have we gone backwards in this world? So we wouldn't have known what God. So they could have just called themselves Scooby-Doo, and we still would have worshipped them. Duh.
Scary as hell, but I'll let you figure it out. And if you can't figure it out on your own, then we're all doomed. So this black goo stuff was in the sky in Australia. This black goo stuff is called, I'm not going to say the name of it, and it reacts to sound frequencies such as those produced by you-know-what. And how did that stuff get in the sky? You guessed it. I'm not going to name. You can figure it all out. NASA says a massive rock is heading towards Earth. It will pass us on April the 30th. Now, hang on, there's another thing that someone said, well, hang on a minute, if these asteroids in the asteroid belt was a planet originally called Tiamat that got broken up and became the asteroid belt and Earth, there's just not enough asteroids out there to make a whole planet the size that Tiamat would have been. And so when you look it up, you realise that actually it's only 3% of the moon. So yes, not enough planets, not enough rocks to make up a massive planet. Now, we don't actually know where Pluto and Venus comes from. We know Earth come from Tiamat. We know that. I'll tell you why in a sec. But if you actually look at things like the European Union, they literally say there could be tens, if not hundreds of millions more asteroids out there that we don't even know about. So in other words, this bit here where they're saying it's 3% is just made up. It's guess. That's why you should never follow mainstream. Always follow me. Now, we know that Earth was part of a planet called Tiamat because in the British Museum there's a tablet called the Anunnaki, and that set of tablets actually, that tablet explains from the Anunnaki's point of view what happened
to our solar system and how their planet came in. Bearing in mind, this is before people realised the Earth was a globe, before people even knew about the Bible, etc. So, in other words, no one should have known about our solar system and what planets were here, but yet we have tablets. In other words, the Anunnaki were real. So I have done a family tree on what planets were where and everything based off of those tablets, and I even give you the names of them so you understand the names of where they come from, etc., and what planet they actually derive from, because some of them derive from a different planet. So if you're interested in that family tree, it's on my Patreon page, and it goes through all the different planets that came and different times that they came, etc., with their different names that's given to them around the world. So yeah, go look that up. Did you know we have over 1,000 humongous pyramids worldwide, which ends the idea that Africans built them, because some countries didn't even have Africans in them when the pyramids were built? Did you know that the alien cattle mutilations, they take the animal first while it's alive, they incubate something in various parts of its body, and then a few months later they come back and take the animal and then drop it back down after they took the incubated parts away? Did you know that the genuine crop circles were done by orbs, basketball size orbs, and it produces a 400% extra yield compared to the man-made fake crop circles? Did you know we have documentation that was leaked from the 50s that actually show what the military do when they come across a crashed UFO? It's called SOM 101. You can look it up. You can actually find all of this information out, plus so much more, from my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. You can search for videos, or you can just click on the video link here, search for whatever you want. Don't you love Skaranas? That's a new name for numpties. So anyway, this person's basically saying, because I did a video saying that you can watch a brand new documentary that's an hour long, free of charge, on my Patreon page, this person's wrote, never trust anyone who only shares knowledge in exchange for money. So basically, some of my other videos are on Patreon where I charge a couple of pounds, and I sit and edit weekly, every single day. In fact, I take a day off now. I only work 4 days full time, and I do a day doing this videos. Plus also I've got a website called ourtruehistory.co.uk, which has all the videos that I do on TikTok, put in sets of 5 and sets of 50. And of course this website costs money. But if this person's saying I only do it, then obviously the free ones here on my website makes this numpty look like a numpty. But then obviously if you go to Netflix, where you've got this gentleman here paying for knowledge on Netflix, I'm going to tell you the real name of God, unlike anyone else that's ever done. So we know the actual God is the Anunnaki. We know that's their race name. That's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. However, the Anunnaki did mention that there was a creator of everything. That's what the translations come out to. However, no one knows the name. I now do. I know the name that was given either by the source or creation to the Anunnaki, or a name that they gave to this thing. So I will be doing a video showing you who the Anunnaki called, or what they called, the creation, the creator of everything. So this will be on my Patreon page in the next week or so. Once again, guys, I have now solved yet another mystery with evidence.
Did you know we now have the evidence to show who the Norse gods were in relation to the Anunnaki? We now know the 10 plagues of Egypt started in Israel, and the aftermath was in Egypt. We have evidence that Lilith didn't know Adam at all, but she did know Adamu. One amazing researcher has worked all this out, and even worked out the trumpets in the Bible were rockets or missiles. The same researcher has produced a video with evidence proving the Bible was a copy of the older Anunnaki texts, the race called gods. He's even given evidence as to why the Nazca mountain range was sliced off, and so many more world's firsts. But before you put the laughing faces icon, why not watch just one of these amazing documentaries? Simply visit ourtruehistory.co.uk and scroll down to where it says click here. Then if you have evidence to prove his evidence wrong, he would love to see it. If you can't, then maybe watch his other videos and learn about our true history.
A lot of the Indian texts, the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient lore of the indigenous...
Billy was asked where he gets his information about Atlantis from, and he listed all of those tablets and the Enuma Elish. Sadly, they don't
have anything to do with Atlantis. The only ones that you can actually go by is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and any works by Plato, but we know Plato made a lot of that up because there is no way a friend of his could have remembered 4 hours worth. That's how long it takes you to read one of his books. 4 hours worth of information from a priest that got it from 8,000 years ago, including the depths of the lakes, etc., and the smells around Atlantis. That's all made up. So some of what Plato says is possibly real, but the rest is made up. He was an author, by the way. So I hope that helps clear up something about Atlantis. Have a listen to this and I'll interject with my own thoughts and research.
Atlantean is a specific name of the type of civilization that they built. They built an Atlantean civilization on this planet.
Actually, the first thing is that the actual word Atlantis wasn't the original word. It was another word that I can't pronounce, but go look it up, you'll find out it's a different name. But anyway, you carry on with that.
And I personally believe after many decades of research and investigation, reading over 1,000 cylinder scrolls, tablets, papyruses, ancient texts, and so forth, visiting with ancient sages and wisdom keepers and archaeologists all around the world, my personal hypothesis now is that it's not just Earth that was Atlantis.
So bearing in mind, the only two documents really that we have to mention anything to do with Atlantis, even though he's just reeled off loads of other things, they're not in those. The only two things we've got is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth translations. We don't actually have the originals. They date back to at least 1,200 years. And the text from Plato, which we know he was an author. There's no way his friend could have gave him 4 hours worth. That's how long it takes to read one of his books. The information that his friend got from a priest that got it from 8,000 years ago, there's no way you'd remember all of that, including the smells of what Atlantis was and the depths of the lakes, etc. So Plato's, as we know, may have got a tiny bit of information and then, added the rest. But there is all these information that Billy's just said there. They're not. There's nothing to do with Atlantis. So he's kind of just. You get the idea.
It was also the moon, and it extended all the way to Mars, and maybe even beyond.
So he's saying Atlantis was not only Earth, it was also the moon and beyond. Now, bearing in mind, I've read all of or as many tablets as I can possibly read, and the only two mentions is Plato's and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. So how he's come to the conclusion that a sunken city in concentric circles created by Thoth ended up being the moon and outside of Alps, I don't get it. And if anyone's interested in actually where the Atlantis is, I'm the only one that worked it out. Now, actually, I do have a sunken city, unlike everyone else. So mine's ticks that box. Mine's actually a sunken city in concentric circles. That ticks that box. Mine actually has a temple of Thoth on it that's also been sunk with it. That ticks that. But basically, I got 14 points that actually match with, as I say, Emerald Tablets and Plato's writings. So that's on my pinned videos if anyone's actually interested. So you can either believe Atlantis from Billy, that is the moon, the earth and everything else, or go by the only few mentions of it and watch my video and make your own mind up. Atlantis. In my previous video, Billy Carson said that based off of text that he's read, he concludes that the Earth, the Moon and space are something like Atlantis. And I said no, because the text that he's referred to doesn't mention Atlantis whatsoever. So I do point out the texts that do mention Atlantis. Anyway, so I basically said that I think his hypothesis is completely wrong. Anyway, this person, as you read in the background there, said, I'm jealous of Billy. Now, I've debunked Billy many, many times. I could probably do it every single day on every video he does. I've also debunked museums. I've debunked other mainstream researchers. I'm not doing it for fun. I'm doing it because I want the real information out there. You follow me. You know I only want the real information out there. I've even offered Billy... I've sent him emails, etc., saying I'm happy to help you with your evidence, so you don't keep getting it wrong. Never got back to me. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to lie? I can't do that. That's not in me. I have to give the real information. So no, I'm not jealous.
How the Anunnaki knew about our solar system. The race called gods, we know them as Anunnaki, live on a planet called Nibiru. That planet came from outside our solar system. The tablets for this information is in the British Museum. It's called the Enuma Elish. translated by L.W. King. If you want to read this yourself, type in Enuma Elish PDF on Google. Before I explain how the Anunnaki knew about how our universe was formed, we first need to read through the Enuma Elish. I will keep cutting in explaining things. I hope this won't put you off learning about our solar system.
The first tablet. When in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and Chaos, Tiamut, the mother of them both. Their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen. When of the gods none had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained.
It's believed that the Apsu was the sun, our sun in our solar system. There was water in space. This is what NASA says about water in space. Enormous amounts of water, in gaseous form, exist in the vast stellar nurseries of our galaxy. The Hubble Space Telescope peered into the Helix Nebula and found water molecules. Hydrogen and oxygen, formed by different processes, combine to make water molecules in the ejected atmosphere of this dying star. This is the translations from the Moorhen collection. They are pretty much the same as the Enuma Elish translations, but in an easier format to understand.
When it all started, in the above, there were no gods in the heavens, and in the below, Ki, there was no name for the firm ground. Apsu, their first leader, was all alone in the void. In the heights of the above, there were no celestial gods yet, and in the depths of the below there were no celestial gods either. Apsu ruled the void all by himself. Then his winds mixed the waters of the beginning, and Apsu cast a divine and clever spell over the waters. He slept soundly in the deep of the void. Tiamat, the mother of everything, became his wife. She, indeed, was a mother from heaven and a watery beauty.
The mother of everything isn't the creator of everything. Tiamat was a watery planet. In fact, it was an ice planet. Watch my documentary on the Norse gods, where I explain the Norse myth of a frost giant was in fact Tiamat, the planet.
Apsu's little Mumu then gave birth next to him, and he gave Tiamat a gift to bring to him as his messenger. Only she can have a gleaming metal, gold, that lasts forever.
We are not sure what Mumu was. It could have been a wormhole, portal, dust, or just a huge sun flare, or something else.
Apsu gave this beautiful gift to his wife. Then their waters mixed, and they had divine children to bring into the world. The Celestials were created in both male and female forms. Lamu and Lahamu were their given names.
Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven. Lamu and Lahamu were called into being. Ages increased. Then Ansar and Kisar were created.
I have created a family tree on all the planets and their names, and which planet gave birth to which. Please remember, the Anunnaki, gods, always spoke about objects in heaven, which we know is space, as if they were alive. If these planets had personalities and mouths and eyes, this is just how they spoke about them. The first children of Tiamat was Mars and Venus. I'm not sure how a planet can create more planets, but back then, and I'm not talking about 4.5 billion years ago, that's when Nibiru planet came into our solar system. I'm talking about way back when only the sun was here first. I guess as planets were forming, parts may have broke off, creating smaller planets.
And over them, long were the days. Then there came forth Anu, their son.
Apsu and Tiamat constructed a house below. Anshar and Kishar were created in the waters of the above when they were older and taller.
You will hear people on the internet talking about the firmament and how we are under a dome, an invisible dome, and above that is water. This is because they don't research. They have took passages from the Bible and made up stories to fit, instead of actually going back to the original texts. You'll see soon how this firmament is really the asteroid belt.
Ansar and Anu, and the god Anu, Nudimud, whom his fathers, his begetters, abounding in all wisdom. He was exceeding strong. He had no rival. Thus were established and were the great gods. But Tiamat and Apsu were still in confusion. They were troubled and in disorder. Apru was not diminished in might, and Tiamat roared, she smote, and their deeds.
They were taller than their older brothers. The two were created to be a celestial couple, and they had a son named An in the faraway heavens. He was their scion.
The Anunnaki seem to have divided up the solar system into the word heavens. You'll hear shortly how one heaven is inside the asteroid belt, the 3 planets which includes Earth. There might be 7 heavens in our solar system. Kishar and Anshar were Jupiter and Saturn. They had 2 children planets and was Uranus, and Untu was Neptune.
Then Antu was brought out, who was Un's equal and would be his wife. Their house was built on the outskirts of the upper waters. This is how, below and above, 3 heavenly couples were created in the depths.
If you are enjoying this, why not watch the full version, which explains how the Anunnaki knew about our solar system. In fact, there's over 150 other long documentaries you can watch. They are on my Patreon page. It's only a couple of pounds, and more content is added every week. Find out why Stonehenge is there. Find out who Yahweh really was. Learn that the crystal skulls are not fake. See Easter Island for what it really is. Understand the mark of the beast, and so much more, all with evidence. Head over to patreon.com/ourtruehistory. There's also free documentaries there. Click on Collections then Free. Watch an hour-long documentary on the Great Flood. Trust me, you won't find this kind of research anywhere else. Thanks for your support. Our True History.
Finally, someone's actually watched the video where I keep saying, go see the evidence. Anyway, this person's trying to come back with errors that I may have done. Unfortunately, so far, the first one that they've come across was basically saying, why is the book that was written off of translations called Mr. Mesopotamia? This book was done over 100 years ago, before we knew about other tablets that correlate and actually back up, plus also temples we found since, plus artifacts, etc. So in other words, if that person was alive today, he wouldn't have wrote myths. Hope that makes sense.
Did you know President Eisenhower signed a treaty with aliens to allow them to abduct us in return for technology? Did you know the reason why people think there's no such thing as dinosaurs is because before 1700s there was no museums, so when someone found a dinosaur bone, they didn't know what to do with it. They had no telephones, no internet, so they just buried it again. Did you know if you type in the words Enki and Nimna, you will actually read the translations of the Anunnaki when they created us humans? Yes, it wasn't God. Technically, their race name is gods. Did you know that Bigfoot actually comes from China? That's the original place where their crashed ship landed. Did you know that we humans are classed as containers? And that's for these orbs, these light energy beings that are nothing to do with us, but they join with our pineal gland. You can find all of this out from my website. I have a section here called videos, and all the videos on TikTok are in sets of 5 and sets of 50, so you don't even have to scroll. Enjoy. The Earth is a globe. I'm going to prove it right now. So here in Columbia University, they had 455 tablets back in 1895. Since then, they were loaned many more, even from the Rothschilds. And the Rothschilds had more hens. George and Ryan translate the ones that belong to the Rothschilds. In those tablets, they talk about the Anunnaki, which is the alien race that came here. Now, what I'm about to play you, remember, back then, this is the oldest language known to Earth. Back then, they would have thought the Earth was flat, because there's no way they would have looked up and gone into space and saw it was round in any shape or form. Here we go.
In Shurubak, he grew up and wed Emzara, and she bore him 3 sons. During his reign, the world's woes intensified. Diseases and famine plagued the globe.
Plagued the globe. I rest my case. I'm going to educate everyone on the firmament properly. Okay, so forget the Bible, and that's where you get the waters above. Forget all of that. This actually, what I'm about to play you, is translations from the Columbia University tablets that predate the Bible, that actually talks about everything that you guys think is the firmament and an invisible dome. So I'm going to play some bits and I'm going to keep stopping it so you can understand what it's referring to. At the beginning, it's going to play about Nibiru. So Nibiru is a planet that came into our solar system and smashes up another planet called Tiamat, which created part Earth and part asteroid belt. So have a listen to this translation. If you don't believe me, you can go to Columbia University and basically look it up. So here we go.
Nibiru fired a lightning bolt at North Wind.
Right, so the Anunnaki, in any of their texts, talk about things like the planets as being alive. So a dragon was a comet and so on. So that's the reason why they fire a lightning bolt. It wasn't really a lightning bolt. It was the wind was actually its moon.
He transmitted a message, and Tiamat's head was taken away in a blaze of light to an unknown location.
That is us, Tiamat's head, Earth.
Kingu was also sent away with her.
Kingu is our moon, which was Tiamat's moon.
And the portion that had been severed was to be his friend. Nibiru then considered what would happen to the back part. He wanted it to be a combat trophy that would survive eternally. The battleground to be enshrined serves as a permanent reminder. He used his mace to sever the horse's back. They then strung them all together to form a hammered bracelet. He secured them as watchmen by locking them together. A firmament to keep the waters separate from the...
So, there you go. So it's the asteroid belt. Now listen to this bit one more time.
A firmament to keep the waters separate from the waters.
So that basically means that the actual original planet, Tiamat, was a water planet. So they separated the waters from there and the waters from there. And they called this part heaven and they called this part heaven. So together they were heavens, as written in the tablets as well as in the Bible. So that's why we've got an asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. That's why it's classed as a firmament, because it's protecting the three planets inside the firmament. So next time people say there's an invisible dome, which one are you going to believe? You're going to believe people that's never seen an invisible dome, and watch my pinned video if you think that Admiral Byrd talks about a dome, or the Encyclopedia Britannica, or any crap like that. Go watch my pinned video on the Flat Earth. This is the tablets in the Columbia University. Go read them. Predates the Bible. That's where the Bible gets it from. That's your waters above. That's the firmament. Enough now. No more silliness about firmaments. Did you know people fast because of the Anunnaki? And so when they don't eat, it's because of the Anunnaki. So I'm going to play now a audio clip from a translation from the Moorhen collection, which is tablets in the Columbia University, where Enki had told a human to write down everything that he's going to tell him about all the stuff that's happened in the past. In other words, creating humans, the flood, and everything else. So have a listen to this. So this is where Enki's telling the human that he's going to have to sit for 40 days while Enki speaks for 40 days, and this scribe has to write it all down. Are you ready?
I will talk for 40 days and 40 nights, and you will write during that time. 40 will be the total of those days and nights, since 40 is my sacred number among the gods. You must fast for 40 days and 40 nights, and consume bread and water once, which will be enough to keep you alive for the duration of your assignment.
And there you go. That is fasting from aliens, not God. In a previous video I said where the word firmament first was mentioned, which is in ancient Sumerian texts, and where this person is saying I have no idea what I'm talking about because the dictionary says something different, because the asteroid belt was the actual firmament, that's what protects Earth. Anyway, so to this person, who's not the world's smartest person, where do you think people in the dictionary got the original word from? And unfortunately, silly people think that the word firmament means a dome over because it protects Earth. So they had no idea. They weren't Assyriologists, they weren't archaeologists, the people in the dictionary. They saw a word and said, that sounds like it's protecting Earth.
You see my point now? So they come up with the idea that there's a fixed dome over our planet, invisible, whereas we know different because we actually can read the original texts, not the Bible.
The Anunnaki used AI. These are the Anunnaki, the aliens that created us humans. And according to Billy Carson, they used AI. Now, I've been reading these texts forever, as you probably know. I've never come across it now. Unfortunately, the video I just saw of Billy Carson's didn't allow me to stitch anymore. I wonder why. So, if anyone knows where Billy's got this information that he says that the Anunnaki had AI and that they debated over whether or not to use them, etc., etc. The problem we've got with that is, why did they need to create humans? They could have created the robots. That's why I don't think that's true, because obviously they created us humans. They could have just used the robots that was over in apparently in their spaceship, which I've never read. So if anyone's got any evidence, because Billy never seems to show where he gets the evidence from, whereas I do. So if anyone's got any evidence of Billy talking correct, please let me know. Yes, well.
These are not aliens. They're mutated humans from a parallel version of Earth that
It's interesting to see another researcher like myself say the same things I used to think. He's saying it as he believes it's real now, whereas I used to believe that, but I've changed my attitude towards the Greys being us from the future because I carried on researching. Now, Daryl, I think his name's Daryl, is obviously just a researcher, because if he wasn't and was actually getting information from aliens about our solar system, about aliens, etc., there's people that's been taken away and disappeared for a lot less for just seeing a UFO. So, but yeah, so my research ended up basically saying, no, these aliens are actually from, I mean, you know, based off of the crop circles and things like that, that depict the actual alien greys, the Zetas, because it can't be Orions because they're the android type, so it would have to be the Zetas, but they come from another star system, they told us.
Let's take a look at a video.
One of the earliest versions is the Ethiopian Bible and the Sinai Bible.
I do love Dan McLaren. He is someone that will say it as it should be said, which is fantastic. Unlike many other people out there, he actually says it. And of course, now he's come across a video with Billy Carson in, and if you watch Dan's video, he tears Billy to pieces. Because, as I do, and it's not, you know, I get told that, you know, I'm jealous of Billy, etc. No, just like Dan, we both want the actual information, and then Dan does it from, you know, the Bible side of it. Fantastic. He does a great job. Go watch his videos. I highly recommend them. But, you know, it's not us being bad. It's just we want the real information out there. And when you've got people that just make up stuff, that, yeah. So, well done, Dan. Appreciate your work. I've been chatting to this religious person who said that the Earth's only 6,000 years old. I asked him how the tree in Scotland that's 9,000 years old existed before the planet. Anyway, but this comment is always a good one. He wrote, "There are no other hominids, and there never was. In other words, Homo forensis, Neanderthal, etc. Bearing in mind we have Neanderthal DNA, and we have skeletons of Neanderthal that have 100% Neanderthal DNA. In other words, we are part Neanderthal. Unless everyone's lying." Now, I do agree mainstream do lie, but the actual skulls, etc., do look different to ours. Yeah. Help! If you know, I worry that if we're dependent on the last few people on this planet, I hope they're not like this person here, because, yeah, sad.
Gods would go into these pyramids and they would vanish. They would vanish for years.
I'd love to see the evidence of that. The only ancient text that refers to the pyramids is actually the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which doesn't talk about gods going in and disappearing in them. So, if only this guy would actually one day show the evidence instead of just standing there and talking. If only he did what I do. In fact, forget showing my face. I don't show my face, I show evidence. I will never see the evidence that he's referring to because he just keeps saying in tablets. I point to the tablets. I would never just lie to you guys and say it's in tablets and pretend. I will always show you the tablets that it's in. So I doubt if we'll ever get to see that evidence that he probably hasn't got.
Did you know there was 2 Odins and 2 Thors? Did you know that Stonehenge was there because of mining? Did you know the 28-kilometre range that sliced off the top of the Nazca Mountains was done for gold? Did you know that the 10 plagues of Egypt was actually done originally in Israel and the aftermath happened in Egypt? Did you know that we now know who Jesus' real father is with evidence? Everything with evidence. Did you know we have a family tree of the Anunnaki going right down to Jesus, Gilgamesh, etc., and Noah? Did you know that Yahweh, we actually know who Yahweh really was now with evidence? Hang on, I'm going to get there in a sec. Did you know we now know Atlantis, where it was and who was on Atlantis? And did you know that we have the evidence that the Anunnaki were the ones in the Bible? All of this, if you don't believe me, go to my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk, click on the videos or search for the particular video you're after.
This person said the Anunnaki were not real. I said, would you like to see the evidence? But I also said, you won't watch the evidence because no one, for 2 years of doing this, thousands and thousands of times, I've said, do you want to watch evidence to people? And they always change the subject or just say BS. So anyway, this person, because I said that, had to say, yes, I'll watch it. Within a minute, he's posted this up. In other words, he hasn't watched the 32-minute video, which is actually technically 3 hours long if you watch the full version. So in other words, he's not even looked at the video, which is exactly what I said would happen. They never do. This is why my research is second to none, because they have no faith in any gods that they believe in, and they know I'm right. So once again, I win. I always do.
You guys be very proud of yourself when you work out what I already know, which mainstream probably haven't even caught on to because they're a bit thick, but you guys will catch on. So, the missing link is a hypothetical extinct creature halfway in the evolution of modern human beings, in other words, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. So, let's have a look here. So, Homo sapiens, species basically that's just goes off talking about that. Now, obviously, there's a missing link, which would be the Anunnaki that genetically modified us. That's why we've got fused chromosomes. However, down the line, the Anunnaki bred with those Homo sapiens to create the Homo sapiens sapiens. And here it says that they were smarter. This is us. This is the modern humans, in which we are smarter. In fact, even in the original tablet translations, when the first Homo sapiens sapien was born from Enki and a human woman, in other words, Anunnaki and human woman, you'll see here that he possessed intelligence. Now, that's exactly what it says here. They're a bit smarter, making us having a bigger brain, etc. However, this is the bit you're going to catch on to. This Homo sapiens sapien is a subspecies. So this is already got a missing link that's hypothetical, but obviously we know there is a missing link. So these are a subspecies off of that. In other words, that bred with something. What do you think it bred with? Yes, the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki created the Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago, which is pretty much what it says here. That's what it says in the tablets as well, based on their shards, the Anunnaki shards, which is their years. So the Anunnaki created Homo sapiens, but then 200,000 years later, bred with Homo sapiens. Now, I know it says 160,000 years ago. It's actually about 100,000 years ago, because as you watch my videos, you see that mainstream keep changing their dates, and mine doesn't, and mine ends up being correct. So, in fact, I do have a family tree on my Patreon page. So all you have to do is go to patreon.com and then click on collections, and then go to family trees, and it will give you the family tree of the Anunnaki, including where that person Adapa comes from. By the way, that was Adam. Adapa is Adam. So it's not the very first human. It was the human that was the first Homo sapiens sapien from Enki. Here is why God didn't create Homo sapiens. First of all, we have fused chromosomes, which no other hominid had. Plus, also there's Homo sapiens, and then there's Homo sapiens sapiens. So the first one is a species that has a missing link. In other words, there's a creature, an extinct creature that no one really knows, and it's not God. So something bred with the Neanderthals to create the Homo sapiens. Then we have the Homo sapiens sapiens, which is a subspecies. So in other words, yet another thing bred with the Homo sapiens Homo sapiens to create the Homo sapiens sapiens. So now you've got two missing links, but mainstream won't tell you that. That's because the Anunnaki. So if you've watched any of my videos where it talks about the Anunnaki over in the Middle East, etc., tell you what, easier just to follow me. You'll learn the facts as opposed to mainstream, who lie.
They took the caps off some of the pyramids that broke the functionality. They stripped the interior.
I would love to see the evidence for this. Bearing in mind there's only two texts, actually ancient texts, that talk about the pyramids, and neither of them talk about what Billy's saying in this video that he done. The problem I've still got is obviously I still show evidence and Billy doesn't, and people like me want to see evidence, and of course if you've not got it then you're just making it up. I don't know, I'm sorry, I just want to see the evidence, but I'm never going to, because I don't think that's real.
This is a reply to a video I'd done where I showed Billy Carson saying that the Anunnaki dismantled deliberately the pyramids. And in my video I simply said, where is the evidence, Billy, of this? Because there's only two texts, ancient texts, that refer to the pyramids. So I asked for the evidence. Anyway, one of my followers, in fact, said that I've overstepped common sense. How can I overstep common sense if I'm asking for evidence off of Billy for his comments? So I think I haven't lost the common sense. I think maybe you have. Sorry. Just tell me the reason. Give me the reason why I'm wrong asking for evidence off of Billy. Please tell me that.